Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast, brought to you by Bring Hockey Back and FanDuel. Today we have an exciting episode. We have Chris Peters on the show. Chris Peters is going to tell you why he's so excited for Eric Pohlkamp to come to the Sharks. Also, too, Chris is going to talk about the top defenseman of the 2026 draft. In addition, we are going to talk about Macklin Celebrini's MVP case. Is Macklin the MVP no matter what, playoffs or not?
And before we get into all that, I just want to mention Bring Hockey Back, bringhockeyback.net. Go there for custom jerseys and great hockey swag. Remember that this program is brought to you by our sponsor, so supporting them supports this show. And don't forget to use the promo code San Jose Hockey Now at bringhockeyback.net for 15% off all things on the website. That includes team jerseys, guys. So I know Summer League is about to start. Get those new team jerseys in at bringhockeyback.net.
And as you might have noticed, we have a new sponsor, FanDuel. So welcome, FanDuel. FanDuel, your leader in all your sports betting and daily fantasy sports. Go to FanDuel to bet on if the Sharks will make the playoffs or if Macklin Celebrini will win the Hart Trophy. These are all topics that we're going to talk about today. So go to sportsbook.fanduel.com. Now, we have a friend of the show on. Always love to have Chris Peters on. Of course, it's a little funny to have Chris Peters on because a week ago when I booked him, the Sharks looked like they were spiraling out and not going to make the playoffs. And now the Sharks actually, as of April 3rd, 3 p.m., are in the playoffs. But nonetheless, though, we've got Chris Peters on to talk about Eric Pohlkamp and whether or not he can help the Sharks actually in their playoff run. So Eric Pohlkamp going to the Frozen Four with DU, but maybe he can help out the Sharks when DU is finished. Also, too, Chris is going to talk about the top defenseman of the 2026 draft. Chris is, of course, a top draft prospects analyst, content manager at Flow Hockey, and also has his own podcast called Up, the Prospects Podcast. Chris is also, he's the guy who told you after the Sharks kept the number one pick of the 2024 draft lottery, he told you that this would be a day that Sharks fans would remember as important as the day that the Sharks traded for Joe Thornton. And it's looking like that day actually could be more important than that trade for Jumbo, which is a statement unto itself. But anyway, follow Chris on Chris M. Peters on Twitter, Chris M. Peters on Twitter. Welcome, Chris. All right, Chris, welcome back to the show. We love having Chris Peters back on here, 2026 draft expert, maybe not so relevant for the Sharks anymore, but I want to start, Chris, with kind of a big picture global question. Should the Sharks have sucked another season? The fans that are most committed to the rebuild, a lot of them think that the Sharks needed to be bad one more year to get another defenseman into their system, another top defenseman into their system. And so anyway, what do you think, just big picture about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always benefit to adding more high-end players. And certainly this is a good year to be in the lottery range for the draft prospects that are available on defense. But I think it always matters when you're bad. And when the Sharks were their worst, they got the best possible outcome by getting, Macklin Celebrini, by also having Will Smith into the system. So like they've actually already kind of won the rebuild process. You have the cornerstone pieces that you need. Now, you need a lot more than that. And I think that that's what we've seen. Teams that kind of go to the studs down rebuild, they're going to always need to add. But I think there are ways to add around when you have a central core that the Sharks really seem to have now. And it's it is Smith, it is Dickinson, it's all these other players. And then you have some players that we'll talk about as we go through here. And does Eric Pohlkamp figure into the plans more prominently now than maybe he would have thought when initially drafting him? How are we going to see, the maturation of Yaroslav Askarov and all these different things that matter? While I think that any of the defensemen that will be available at the very top end of this draft certainly would have been, capable of becoming part of that core, I don't necessarily know that, you can feel miserable about not being terrible this year. I think the things that we saw, how much does Macklin Celebrini need to be he's already one of the best players in the league. And so how much of a supporting cast does he really need? Even Crosby needed a good supporting cast. So the answer is they still need quite a bit. But I would say that, that this is a long-winded way of saying, like, I think that this season is going to end up turning into a positive. Playing meaningful games down the stretch of the season at this young age for a lot of these players is a benefit. Being in the race is a benefit. I've seen teams that have been in years-long rebuilds, and I think the Chicago Blackhawks could end up being an example of this. The way that things have kind of gone for them is that, they're still feel pretty far away. Whereas the Sharks don't feel as far away. They're probably, like, I would say that they've probably overachieved this year. I think that that's kind of one of the things that stands out to me is that, I think, are they this good? But now you get Macklin Celebrini next year, a year better, Will Smith a year better, Sam Dickinson a year better, like all these different players. And then you also have seen, some players rise up a little bit and get their experience at the AHL level. Chernyshov, I think, is ahead of schedule. You've got guys like Musty and Beestet who could potentially be options down the road here that have played well. So there's a lot of things there, but in general, I think that this season can only be viewed as a positive and almost like found money, in the way that they've gotten this chance to have like a really fun season, which not all these rebuilding teams get to have.
You, of course, we had you on after the Sharks won the draft lottery in 2024, and you said back then that winning or keeping the number one pick in 2024 would be a day in Sharks history like the Joe Thornton trade. And so back then, that seemed like, wow, that was a wild statement, but not anymore, right?
Yeah, I might know a little bit of what I'm talking about sometimes. I mean, I'll tell you what, like if you would have told me that Macklin Celebrini would be this good this soon, I wouldn't have bought that.
Yeah.
Even though I loved the player. I mean, I've said it before and I said it then.
Yep.
Since I've been doing this, there has not been a more complete player that I have seen, and that goes back, I started in 2010. So I had not seen, I didn't cover Crosby's draft. I had never seen a player that had checked as many of the boxes as Macklin Celebrini did in his draft season. And you can only see that like after being in it for a while, right? Like that if I said that in year 2, that wouldn't have been that impressive of a statement, but it was, almost 15 years into doing it and having seen some really, really good first overall picks. And so, I think that to me, he was always going to be the cornerstone. He was going to be the face of the franchise. But I don't know that I thought it would happen this quickly for them. And I am so impressed with what Macklin continues to do and how he continues to elevate and because this has really been the story. He's really on trend with what he has been. This isn't like Matthew Schaefer, who was injured and then showed up and was like, oh my God, he's one of the best already. Like, what do we got going on here? Like, this was Macklin Celebrini. There was evidence that he was trending towards the elite. And I think there were, I don't know if it was on your podcast or I certainly said it on my own. We talked about how when he was at Boston University, Jay Pandolfo said he's like kind of like Crosby light or diet.
Oh, yeah. You said it. Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then by year 1 in the NHL, I was like, what if he just is Crosby? Like, what if he is? Yeah. Like, what if he is? And now in year 2, what if he's going beyond that? Like,
what if he is Mexican Coke Crosby?
Yeah,
sugar,
I mean, like
sugar, baby.
Yeah. I mean, like, or McDonald's fountain Coke Crosby. But yeah, it's just like it's really insane to see a player at this age play at that level, without and he didn't have the hype of Bedard, did not have the hype of McDavid. Nope. And that may be largely because of the path that he took, because he went USHL to college to pro, which you don't get the TSN and Sportsnet hype machines behind you the same way that happened with McDavid and certainly with Bedard. And Bedard's numbers were eye-popping and everything else, but, I wrote at the time in his draft year, I was like, he's not that far away from Bedard. I mean, like, offensively, though, I thought Bedard would be the higher offensive ceiling player, even knowing how good Celebrini was. I was like, well, he's so focused on his play away from the puck that maybe he just won't. I was like, oh, okay, I see now. He just does everything. So, okay, that's great. I mean, I could not have predicted that the Sharks would have won that like much in that draft lot. Like, I knew it was a big deal, and I said it. Like, I felt it. I meant it when I said this is probably the biggest moment since the Thornton trade.
Yeah.
And now I think we know it's bigger.
Yeah.
It's even bigger. Yeah, I looked up the other day, and it was, I think Macklin had scored his 40th goal of the year, and I was like, 40 goals, holy shit! Like, I didn't even like. It just blew my mind that he already hit that number, and like we could not have even come close to predicting. I was like, oh, he'll probably be a point a game this year, do really well. Sharks will still be bad, and nope, blew the expectations like completely out of the water there.
Yeah, he is a freak. He is a freak, and it's funny. He's not built in a different way. He's certainly, built strength and all these other things, but he's not a huge human being. He's not, he's not the best at any one thing. It's just that he's so good at everything. And on top of it, the character of the player as well, the competitiveness that he possesses. And I think that that's born out of always being the best and everyone gunning for you and just not having any time to deal. You're just like, whatever, fine, try, like no one has ever rattled him. It's crazy.
I don't want to make this simple like Celebrini versus Bedard thing, because I think that storyline is actually in the dust now, to be at the moment, at least, and it's not even a discussion now.
No,
and that's no disrespect to Connor Bedard, who's a great player, elite offensive talent, but when the Sharks were on their losing streak, and people, I would see the stupid Twitter for you algorithm, which feeds stuff that you don't really want to see.
Yeah, never.
But you see it.
It's an accident.
People would say, "Oh, the Sharks and Blackhawks are like 2 points apart, 4 points apart." Like the San Jose, whatever, being ahead is hype. But I don't think it is, because, and I'm not just comparing Celebrini to Bedard. I'm comparing Celebrini to other kind of linchpin prospects of builds, maybe not rebuilds, but builds, like Michkov in Philadelphia, or you carry down, except for really Schaefer and maybe Carlson in Anaheim, I think is right there too, or close at least. But you have a clear number one guy that is well-rounded in a way, or is so good at, like McDavid may not be as well-rounded, but so good offensively that could be your number one player for a Stanley Cup winner, which is the point. And I'm not convinced that these other guys, obviously Bedard, Michkov, any of these other guys are that, right? And so I think that's the biggest difference. So no matter where the Sharks finish in the standings, they've found somebody that is your number one player for a great, great team. And that leads me to asking you this, Chris. I did a story about a month ago. I asked about 24 people in the league, coaches, executives, scouts, Celebrini versus Schaefer to start your team. Who do you pick?
Oh, it's not close. It's Celebrini.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that, and that's not a diss on Schaefer, because I think he's spectacular. The difference is that I think Celebrini is so much more of what every championship team needs is like, you think of the Blackhawks with Taves, the Penguins with Crosby. It hasn't worked for Edmonton with McDavid. That's the thing, is like there's a certain type of player, that I think matters.
Barkov.
And Barkov, exactly. Barkov, you need that. Like you can win without, like Vegas was able to win with the collective. I felt more like, like they didn't necessarily, but like they couldn't have won it without Eichel. Right.
Yeah.
So like, but they were more of a collective. But like, I do think that, to me, the center is the most important position. Even though Schaefer will probably end up averaging more ice time on a per game basis than any other player, the driver of play is almost always the center. And teams that don't have a center that can drive don't win. And so it's one of the hardest things to get because a true number one center in the league, if you are one of the 10 best centers in the league, you have a chance, I think, to drive your team to a Stanley Cup, assuming that your supporting cast is better. Schaefer is going to continue to be a very important figure for the Islanders and is going to be the face of that franchise and is going to be the guy that they can build around. But I think if it's close, and I don't think it is, quite frankly, as good as Schaefer is, I do not think it is close. Celebrini is the kind of player that, and I think I may have even said it in his draft year, but like he does everything you need to do to win. Interestingly enough, however, hasn't won a lot yet in his career. Has not won, so that is, that's a thing. Not with Team Canada, even at the Olympics, not with, not at the World Juniors, not at the under 18s, not with the Chicago Steel, not with BU. So, he hasn't tasted that yet. And I don't think that matters, quite frankly, because he does all of the things you need. If none of those teams lost because of him, you're going to say like, I hate to do this. Like it's not fair because they're not the same player. They're not even, but it's like, did Gavin McKenna raise the level of his team enough to, like that's the conversation we're having for this year's draft. And we threw that argument aside long ago. Like we knew like, hey, that we should never ever compare McKenna to Celebrini. They're two different things. It's not even close, but like you see the way that Celebrini uplifts a team, and you don't see that right now with McKenna, which I think is why we're having the debate about, is he really a number one prospect? Which, I mean, I think based on what we've seen, he probably still is. And it's not, it's hard for a wing to be that player that lifts that team. That's why I think the center position is so important. So, if you give me a chance, Shang, I'm sorry for not seeing, but what was the outcome of your poll?
They said it was, a lot of people said it was close for them, but it was actually not that close in the numbers. It was like 21-5 for Celebrini, and Carlson was third place, was like a distant third place to those two.
Yeah. So and I mean, it's not surprising because I think there are definitely different philosophies of thought too in terms of building from the net out and different things.
Yeah, some people are definitely
like,
that's how they see it, the defense,
and you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning. If it was any one of Kucherov, Stamkos, and Hedman, if it was just one of those guys, they never win a Stanley Cup because they had those guys. They had that core plus Vasilevsky. That's what it took. So I mean, that is also a good reminder for our earlier discussion is that, if you have the centerpiece, it helps, but you do need to continue to build around it and foster that. And I do think there are ways to do that outside of the draft. But, now we're going to have to see exactly what San Jose does in these next steps where the decisions are tougher because you don't have that high of a pick or you don't have, so this is really going to be maybe one of the more challenging times for them in terms of taking those next steps, especially when we see the trade market and the free agency market not really being as strong as you would potentially need to have difference makers come into your team. So a lot of interesting times ahead for San Jose.
I got a quick, to steal from your podcast, a quick beyond belief question for you.
Thank you.
Had the Sharks won the Schaefer draft lottery, Sharks would win 5 Stanley Cups in the next 10 years. Beyond belief.
I'm only going to say beyond belief because I think it's, we just haven't seen, even with some of those great teams that I mentioned, it's really difficult to keep in a cap era, even though the cap's going up, it'd be really difficult to keep them. But yeah, I mean, if you had Schaefer and Celebrini at the same time, That's
insanity.
It's insane. It's too good of a stroke of luck. I mean, and the Penguins had Crosby and Peak Malkin and and Letang and all that.
Colorado has McKinnon and Makar.
Yeah, McKinnon and Makar.
One.
Yes, and they only won one, and they've had great teams. I don't know that they have necessarily ever had the linchpin goalie, which is a key factor, which is why Tampa won and Chicago didn't necessarily have that, but they had, they had enough. And so, yeah, I think it's really difficult to win more than 3 in a
10-year span or so.
In a 10-year span. Yeah, I would say. I mean, like, I think Chicago doing it a few years ago, that was, and they had to reinvent themselves a couple of times in that process because of how tight they were to the cap.
And I wanted to add on something you just said, Chris, and we talked about this last week on the episode, that Mike Grier's decisions, I think, they fall under more of a microscope now. Like, let's say you're the Sharks and you decide Darren Radish is our guy in free agency. You can't be wrong about that anymore. You could be wrong when you're rebuilding, take flyers on guys, Timothy Liljegren down the line. You can be wrong or right on some guys, right, like Dmitry Orlov. But now, though, like, some of these decisions they take a greater weight. But before we get to, I want to talk Eric Pohlkamp, but just very quickly, I want to revisit this discussion from the 2023 draft, where I think it turns out that we probably were all wrong. Will Smith versus Matvei Michkov. And Sharks have that. They're at the number 4 pick. Bedard, Carlson, Fantilli have gone. Most Sharks fans wanted Michkov, I would say. I would say Keegan and I, we both thought Michkov, just all that offensive talent, oozes it, obviously. That's the pick there. The Sharks went a different direction. And so how do you see that now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still early in that discussion. Sure. Like, I do think that there's, and that's the thing, is like, Celebrini is such a unicorn in that, we can't, like, we can make a lot of us, like, determinations about him right now, whereas we can't necessarily do that with Will Smith or Michkov, because I think they both have had their ups and downs, but in very different ways. And to me, what you need is a real complementary player, and what I think the Sharks got in Smith was far greater in terms of team cohesion. And this isn't to say anything about character or anything with Michkov, but look at the relationship that Smith and Celebrini have forged. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if they said, we're going to be the guys, and we're just going to, and to not, like, it would be really hard not to be, like, super competitive. Like Will Smith and Ryan Leonard were teammates for forever, but extremely competitive with each other. Whereas now you have the relationship with Celebrini, where it's like, hey, this is our team, and we've got to take it to the next level. And the response, and they've done it with this youthful enthusiasm that is obviously incredibly endearing. But on top of that, I think there's a real maturity in that awareness that they have of what they're going to mean to this franchise. So I don't think, like, in terms of who will be the better player is not a relevant conversation. Who is the better fit? I think that we can say with some definitive feel that Will Smith was the appropriate pick. And you couldn't have known at that time what was coming next. So it's a risk that you take, but in the end, it worked out in their favor, I feel.
Yeah. I would say, though, that the Sharks probably had some sense, because there's questions about Michkov's coachability and all that kind of stuff, right? And so I don't know if that stuff has been vanquished at all.
No, it hasn't.
However, whatever side you think of, Tocchet and Michkov. So, but whereas, I think Will has fit in, like you said. So, let's move on to current Sharks prospects. And Eric Pohlkamp, obviously having a fantastic season. He is a top 3 Hobie, what they call hat trick finalist.
Yep.
He might even win it. It sounds like he's actually
got
very
a chance.
Much,
he's got a chance. Yep.
But we're more interested here in what he's going to do in the NHL. And there's, when a guy does this well in a season, but then you look at, obviously, the draft profile isn't as great. He's an older player, too.
Yep.
Is he a guy that, first of all, can he step into the Sharks this season and help this current Sharks team in the playoffs? Do you think he is capable of that, or that's kind of asking too much of him?
I think he is capable.
Okay.
I think that it's in a managed situation to start. Mm-hmm. But here's what I'll say about Eric Pohlkamp. I live near the Cedar Rapids arena. I saw him a ton in the USHL. First season, I was like, there's something with this kid. I don't know what it is. There's something there, but he was a little bit out of shape. He didn't really interview well. Like, teams were kind of shying away from him.
Yeah.
The next year he took another step, and then he got to college and he took another step and another step. And this year he really was one of the best players in college hockey. I think if I were to guess, Max Plant's going to probably win the Hobie, but at the same time, I would say that Pohlkamp is probably at worst going to finish second. And that is the amazing thing about where he's been. So how would he potentially fit in? Here's the things I like about Pohlkamp. I think he's an incredibly intelligent player. He's extremely competitive. He's physical, but because even with that just vicious physicality that he can display, he's a pretty clean player. He doesn't take a lot of penalties. He's really aggressive in his own end. He's got an absolute cannon from the point. So you've got another guy that could potentially be another power play option for you to be there. He moves pucks very well, and he's so hard to knock off the puck. And so like, you know, he knocks people off the puck all the time. I think that he's found a way, and Denver has been incredible at developing players like him over the years. And he is really, I think he's a little bit unique compared to some of the other guys like the Zeev Buyums and Will Butchers and other guys, Mike Benning, who, you know, that have this offensive bent to their game, in that, you know, he's just incredibly competitive and just really, you know, takes care of his own end and all these other things. He's been a World Junior player. He played at the Spengler Cup this year on that college select team. He's played such big minutes. I do think that translates. And so, you know, he wouldn't be in a role with the Sharks for a little bit like he was at Denver. I don't think he's going to be a top 4 guy immediately or anything like that. But I do think that they're, you know, to find a player that has matured and developed the way that he has to the point where you might be able to put him right into your lineup is an incredible boon for the team, and a huge compliment to their scouting staff for taking a chance on a guy that a lot of people passed over multiple times. And you know, that to me is going to be a really intriguing player to watch, because I think, like, I look at, he's a little bit big, he's bigger than Torrey Krug, but I see Torrey Krug profile.
That's the one that I said on our podcast the other day. It was like Torrey Krug or Love.
Yeah, and you look at their senior, or not their senior, but you look at their college profiles, and they're not terribly dissimilar. I think Krug had better over. Krug was basically Michigan State's entire team when he was there. That's not the case with Pohlkamp, where you know, Denver has more depth around him. But I see those two players, and you know, I definitely get significant Torrey Krug vibes, and Torrey Krug turned into a very solid NHL player who was never drafted. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even despite his size and everything, because he's built so thick and built so heavy.
Thick. I said on my podcast this week that he's built like a fire hydrant, which I was like, I don't mean that to sound like a pejorative, but he's stocky, and he's wide, and he is hard to knock off the puck.
Yeah, so even seeing like how few short D get drafted these days, you still think this guy has a chance to work into a top 4 role eventually?
I think, yeah. I mean, like, if the Torrey Krug projection holds, you know, yes, absolutely.
And so this year, do you see that he can then, if you say if you manage his minutes, then I assume that means that he can help out. And granted, the Sharks' defense isn't very deep, so he can maybe help out on a bottom pairing, and you could put him on power play too with his shot, and that might translate immediately, because that would be very impressive if he's able to do that.
I mean, I'm not sure that you would throw a guy into the power play that quickly. You know, I think that there's, you would have, I mean, if you felt like it needed a jolt, you say, you stand here and keep your stick in the air, and we'll send it to you. And
we're losing like 3-0 against Colorado, and it's game 4, and we're bombs away.
But I do, like, you know, I think that because of what I've seen from him, the minutes that he plays, the high leverage situations that he plays in, the way that he's reading plays, you know, I think, you know, you'd love to get him in, see what the regular season looks like. How is he handling the pace? Because that's the one thing that I don't know how he's going to adjust to, because I think there was when he was at Bemidji State, when he started his collegiate career, he adjusted right away. But then he got to the NCHC. There was a little bit of more of an adjustment period. Didn't take him really long, and then he was outstanding, you know, and then this year he was, you know, lights out. So, I would want to see how he's going to handle that pace before I throw that stamp of he's absolutely going to help you, and if you make the playoffs. And those are things like I think regardless, you get him into NHL games because you want to see what he's going to look like, and also give him a taste so that he knows what to expect for next season.
Right. So do you think that pace is maybe the big question mark with him then, in terms of whether or not he becomes a top 4 defenseman in NHL or a NHL at all?
Yeah, it's not so much his pace. It's just reading and reacting to the pace of play at the NHL level, which I think he's going to do fine. I am not really concerned about it. It's just one of those things where it's like, especially in the very short term, like Zeev Buium had to adjust to that. He didn't adjust to it particularly well last year, and I think he's overall a better player. So like that's the other the other element, but I do think that there is high likelihood that Pohlkamp would be able to come in and at worst not look out of place.
Okay. Well, that would be a huge win for another huge win for the Sharks scouting staff that's been racking them up. A lot of people talk about Macklin #1. That's easy to pick, but you're not acknowledging Chernyshov. You're not acknowledging Pohlkamp. So down the line, right?
And I'll give you an example of the Avalanche and winning the one Stanley Cup. If you go back, like the period between McKinnon and Makar, they had, I believe they had 0 picks after the first round that reached the NHL. And that, so why did it take that long? You had Duchesne and McKinnon and Landeskog and all these guys, but there was nothing coming next. You've got to hit on a couple of those. You're not going to hit on all of them. You got to hit on those mid-range picks, because you can have the best players in the world like a McKinnon and a Makar, but if there's nothing else coming, then you're in trouble. And they had to build through other means. Whereas Tampa built almost exclusively from within, and only after the fact added a couple of pieces from the outside. But like, you think about guys like Palat, even Radko Gudas back in the day, like or finding undrafted free agents. That's how you do it. You can't just rely on those top picks.
We got one guy to talk about specifically, an undrafted free agent out of college that seems to be doing pretty well for the Sharks.
How about that, Colin Graff? Huh?
How about Colin? Let's move on to some Sharks prospects that are in the NCAA that aren't Eric Pohlkamp, even though we do love our Hobie Baker finalist. Any other thoughts about some guys like Muldowney, Svoboda, Reese Laubach, David Klee? Anybody that you want to mention or talk about, or McKinney as well?
I think McKinney is the story is yet to be written. He is really starting to trend in a positive way. I think he's going to be a bigger player for Michigan next year. So I think that's a guy to definitely keep an eye on for next season, and just as a potential, guy that's going to elevate here. I also think he's going to be a pretty central figure for the U.S. World Junior team, which I do not have particularly high hopes for in the next World Juniors. However, Joey Muldowney, I think, is really, growing into a very strong, player and option for the Sharks. Do I feel like he's a no doubter? I don't, but at the same time, I've seen, the way that he has taken over some of the games that he's played in college, the ability to score that he has. He's developed at his own pace, and I think he's developed in a very positive way. He's one of those guys that I think will have a chance to be part of the core there. I think Svoboda is going to be another guy. Just continue to be patient with that player. There's a lot to like about him. There's more to get to in terms of what his overall profile is going to be. I think, I just think he'll probably end up as a very strong bottom 6, role player. But you need those guys. And if you can get those guys from your own system, they stay fairly cheap as well. So that's another, good area to be in. So I think those are guys. Laubach definitely had a very strong season. There was a lot of time he was playing with Gavin McKenna over the course of the year. I think that there's still more ceiling for him to reach for. Still not a guy that I'm necessarily super sold on at this point in terms of like overall NHL projection, but I still think that there's some value there. And I think with the ability to continuing, like, I think we've seen really strong development in the Barracuda over the last couple of years, and certainly Colin Graff is a great example of the importance of having good AHL development. And these guys are tailor-made to be key players for the Barracuda in the next couple of years, that then potentially that'll get them to, get into the into the Shark system and be at the NHL level a little bit more as well.
Any impact NCAA free agents that you see out there? Obviously, Graf turned into one for the Sharks.
Yeah, most of them have already been spoken for. I think some of the guys, like everybody's going to be talking about TJ Hughes, who's in the Hobie hat trick, undrafted, doesn't have the size profile. Like the question is he an NHL player? Is he a quadruple A player? Like, is he one of those guys like a TJ Tynan, where you're bouncing between the NHL and the AHL? I think that potentially could be. But there's guys like Hayden Stavroff from Dartmouth, CJ Foley from Dartmouth, Hank Cleese from Dartmouth. Those are three guys that are all generating interest and intriguing nonetheless. But I think, we've seen a lot of the top guys go. I didn't think this was a particularly strong year for college free agents. There are some guys that, matriculate a lot of guys where it's like, give them, they're worth a contract, worth a chance to see. But a lot of those guys have already been spoken for.
Yeah, so there's no Colin Graf on defense this year.
I don't think so. Although I do really like CJ Foley. I think that, he's going to be an NHL player at some point.
I liked what I saw from Matthew
DeMarsico, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked what I saw from him, and then Colorado scooped him up.
Colorado has been super aggressive, and for obvious reasons. They haven't had a ton of draft picks. They've been super aggressive on the college free agent front. They've had a mixed bag there, but, I really like that signing of Matt DeMarsico as well.
CJ Foley, has he signed?
Did he?
I don't know. That's why
I don't think he did.
I think we would have heard.
Yeah.
I think I would have known.
Yes, exactly. That's why I'm asking you. Okay.
On high. No.
Yeah, but
doesn't look like it.
So he has it. And the other thing too is like with guys that do play out of the Ivy League schools, they're usually the ones that will stay for like a minimum of 3 years. He's been there for 3 years. We'll see if something shakes out. But yeah, he's a player that I've, I certainly watched this year because Dartmouth was much better as a team this year. And he had a lot of interest last year too. And his numbers were a little bit down this year, but I still think he's a really impressive player.
Yeah, the Sharks' future projection on defense really gets a lot rosier if Sam Dickinson, he is a top pairing guy, and he's had, I think, a good year overall.
Yep.
Eric Pohlkamp is actually a top 4 guy because that's seems to be kind of a debate of where he ends up in the NHL. I think most people agree at this point that he's going to play, but it's just a question of how much impact he'll end up having. So the Sharks still need to find somebody. They need to find a Colin Graf on defense. But speaking, go ahead.
No, I was also just going to say, like, well, I want to see what Simon Wang does next year in college. Like, he still has. He's still so raw. There's still so much for him to do. But like, that's a player. Like, you look at like Sam Rinzel in Chicago. I think that like that could be Wang's. Like, that could be his path. Like that. Like he has that capability based on the physical skill set that he has to potentially be a higher end offensive player at size at 6'6", which would be incredible. I watched him a fair amount this year. Still has a long way to go, but I still think that there's ceiling for him to reach for.
Oh, since you mentioned other Sharks defensive prospects, though, any quick thoughts on Selin Wallenius or Cagnoni? Those are the two other kind of hopefuls. Yeah.
So Cagnoni, I think, is one of those guys where we're going to need to see that step. Like, I like him a lot. I think what we've seen from him in the AHL is really impressive. He's done all he really can do at that level, I feel like, in terms of like what he'll ultimately be. If he's, I think he's a lower minutes player, I think more like if you think of the Sam Girard role over the years in Colorado, and then he eventually moved on, like, I think that could potentially be the kind of role Cagnoni could play. Selin Wallenius is a guy that I really do think has the potential to be a top 4 defenseman who eats minutes and who defends at a high enough level. The question is like, is the offense high end enough? Is there enough to him to give him that level of minutes? He is a player I really like. But I also understand there's just a lot of kind of vanilla to his game, and that which can work out perfectly. So there are plenty of players where that's ideal for them. And that could be for him. But yeah, that's one of the guys that I absolutely believe has at least the ceiling of being a really talented four that eats some minutes and gives you some good defensive defensive play.
All right, well, let's talk about where the Sharks are in the draft right now. Right now on Tankathon, the Sharks hold the 17th pick. Edmonton, they also have Edmonton's first round pick, so that's number 20. So, and like we talked about before the podcast, if the Sharks fall out of the playoffs, they could jump all the way to 11 because that's where Nashville is right now. It's 5 Eastern teams right there. So that's crazy, right? So anyway, though, I guess my first question is, do you see this kind of draft where the Sharks could, let's say the Sharks do end up in the playoffs, that they could package 17 and 20 to get into like the top 10, the outside of the top 10 maybe?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think the drop off is so severe that I just don't think that would be like really. I think once you're outside of the top 12, it's anybody's guess, in terms of how teams are valuing things. I think 17 is a range where you're unlikely to get a significant piece. I feel like I think you're probably making a bet more on upside at that point. But there are things that you could potentially do. Like at 17, there's a good chance the next tier of defensemen are available there. Right. So you're thinking like Ryan Lynn, you're thinking Xavier Villeneuve, players like that, Charlie Morrison. There are a number of players that should be available in that range that you can at least consider as potential. Like Villeneuve is could be like the modern defenseman. It's just a question of whether or not is he too high risk relative to the guys. Like, is he skilled? He's so skilled, but like, even 17, there are going to be teams that I think are going to feel like that's too rich, but maybe 20, he's there still, so like there's, and does that player style fit with where you're going to? Like, that's the other thing that teams are going to have to decide. But I do think that there's still like in that, like 12 to 20 range, you're going to find some good value guys. You're going to find some opportunities to reach for some upside. But I do think, to me, I would struggle if I were a team that had a pick within the first 12, packaging and moving down to get 2 picks that I feel like are, significantly behind whatever I was going to be able to get within the higher picks. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but I think it would require something more than that.
Well, is it safe to say then, and we're recording this on April the 3rd. By the time you listen to this, guys, the Sharks could be back in the top 10, so we have no idea.
That's the thing.
Pick, so.
And they very well could be. And I think like this is a year where the value it's always valuable to be higher. But I think this might be a year where if you're picking anywhere from 3 to 12, you're feeling like, oh, I'm going to get something here that I like. And also, I think it's a good year to not necessarily have the first overall, because I don't think that the way I've described this draft is when you look at number 1, number 2, number 3, you say, how does this compare to other, more recent drafts? And in a lot of cases, it would be behind, I would say. Once you get into that range where you start feeling more comfortable about the defensemen that are available, and that might be 3, 4, 5, it could be 2, it's more than just one defenseman that I think has a chance to be a real franchise building block in this draft. Whereas the 2 top players that we've talked about most of the year are 5'11" wing, 6 foot, undersized wings. Our centers are not all that exciting, even though I really like Caleb Malhotra. I just have a hard time picking him in the top 5, and so same with Tynan Lawrence at this point. So a lot of different options are available, but I do think that there are, this class has done very little to get me super excited beyond, that chunk of defensemen that I think could potentially be difference makers at the next level.
When we had the the draft of 24 where there was like the top 6 of the defense that was kind of like a clear cutoff? Is this like a 5 and then maybe Lynn and Villeneuve
I
afterwards
was going to ask
kind
that.
of thing?
Yeah.
I think like the 5, like the 5 guys that I'm like excited about, Verhoff, Karls, Rudolph, and Smits are the main group of defensemen that get
And
me.
Reed too.
And Reed, sorry, Chase Reed. I don't know why I always forget Chase Reed because he's usually at the top of my list.
Yeah.
And then when I don't say him first, I tend not to say him. But Chase Reed. So that's your group of defensemen right there that I think all have the potential to be difference makers. I think any one of those guys have the potential to be in the top 3. I think we could see, I could see a case where one of McKenna or Stenberg is superseded by one of those guys. But it all comes down to who wins the draft lottery, what their preferences, what their needs are, and where they're going. And it's a tough year to pick at the top because I think there is so much uncertainty, and the job of the scouts is much more difficult this year than it usually is.
What's your order of that 5?
Yeah, as of right now, I do have Reed at the top of that list. Reed is right there. Then it goes for me after Reed, it is Verhoff, then Karls, then Rudolph, then Smits. And I really think that those are, the clear cut guys. I think each of them bring a different thing. Smits checks a lot of the boxes, the size, the mobility, the defending, all those different things. I just don't think he has the offensive upside of some of these other guys. So that's where I would draw the distinction.
And do you think it is because every year it seems like, like you said, Malhotra, other, centers kind of like hop into the top 10. Do you think any of these guys could be available at like the 11th pick if the Sharks do fall out? Or is it more you got to get higher than 11?
For those defensemen?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
5, yeah.
The 5,
yeah, I would have a hard time seeing any of them outside of the top 10 at this point. Mainly because I don't think that there have been enough forwards that have challenged the status quo. Like that. The thing is like, Tynan Lawrence went to college midway through the season, didn't really produce that much, looked a little bit out of sorts at times, didn't necessarily show the hockey sense that I think we thought he had. Which is it's a tough situation for a player to get into anyway. But, and then you look at some of the other guys like Caleb Malhotra is the guy that could really be a disruptor and push some of these defensemen down. He's having a really good playoffs with Brantford. He had a hugely productive season, but he's not one of those guys where like, I think he's going to be a 90-point center or an 80-point center. At the NHL level, he's a good two-way guy, has a lot of really intriguing talents and skills and work ethic and different things. But yeah, I mean, that could push guys down. But I think most otherwise, you're looking at a lot of uncertainty. So I think to get one of those defensemen, I think you're going to have to be in that, top, maybe even top 7 at that point. So it's going to be tough.
Yeah, you make a great comp, though, in terms of just how the rest of the positions aren't as strong in this draft. You look at that 2024 draft, and now we look back, right? And obviously, Macklin as number 1. But Anaheim going up to pick Seneke, which at the time was a surprise, but obviously they knew something that we didn't know. And Demidov fell, probably. Yeah. Demidov was arguably a top 2 talent of that draft. And there's no Demidov, there's no Seneke, and there's definitely no Celebrini, right, in this kind of forward class.
Yeah, no, there's nothing close. Nothing. Well, I mean, it's tough to say, like, yeah, there's just not a lot of sure things. I feel like there's not a lot of guys that, because like, yeah, Seneca was not a sure thing. Like, Demidov felt like a much more certain, like a certainty, and others. And yeah, but you look, I mean, like even, gosh, Columbus took Caden Lindstrom off of an injury-ridden season, and we'll see how that one ages. It hasn't looked good so far.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you're the Sharks then and you are, let's say, stuck at 17-20 range, and who knows if Edmonton goes deeper, that pick may not be 20. But anyway, though, what are you looking at then at that range? If you're not maybe looking at defensemen, who are some kind of ceiling guys there, be it on forward or defense, I guess?
Yeah, I think there could be some players that kind of drift down the board a little bit closer to you. Like Adam Novotny is a guy who I don't think has like the flash and dash. He's a winger, but he's got, he's he's strong. Like I think he's
Mhm.
going to play a long time in the league. I think that he might not be a superstar. Like he might find his way. Like you look at Vasily Podkolzin's, had he not been a top 10 pick, I think we'd be talking about, what a solid pick that was, because he does enough things that help you win. So I got a lot of time for Podkolzin. I think Novotny could be kind of similar. He plays probably more in the middle of your lineup. He's a guy that gives you two-way skills and can score. And then he's also got great character on top of it. So, you've got a guy that I think, like, he could be there at 17. I think it may even be likely that he's there at 17. There's the chance that guys like Oscar Hemming slip. He was really rising up, and then he cooled off and kind of fell back to earth, but he's got size, he's got two-way skills, he's got offensive capabilities. So I think you're going to be able to find plenty of value in that range, players that you've probably heard of, in terms of, not just guys that you're like, oh, I didn't even know that player was eligible for this draft, So I do think that there's still a lot of potential there. I look at some of the upside opportunities. Like one guy that I think has a really high ceiling, but still has a long way to go, is Maddox Dagenet from the Quebec Remparts.
for
He's
sure.
a really intriguing player to me. I'm always going to be like, if you are a bigger player but have really tremendous hands, as he does, I take note of that, because I think that that's one of those things where that gives you a little bit of an advantage. It makes you a little bit different. It makes you a little bit more of a scarcity. And so I do think that Maddox Dagenet, who's kind of trended in a way where he's kind of down the board,
Mhm.
that's a guy where I could see a team jumping up and taking him because of that size skill combo. So there's plenty of options available there, but it's just like, you've got to really, this is where the scouts are going to be making their money. They're going to really make their money on this draft, because I think there's a lot of potential risks and high risks and high rewards, and some high risks and low rewards, when we talk about some of the bigger players with less skill, so like, I think there's a lot there.
Are we going to become the new Vancouver? Are we in Ruck twin territory at 17 and 20? Can we count?
I
Or
don't
are they
know
a
that I
little
would
bit
take
too?
that. Might be too early for me.
Yeah.
They're really interesting. I think, certainly that there's a chance within that range. I think there might be a few teams that will value them a little bit higher. Wherever, I don't know, is Carolina lurking somewhere around? I'm sure they'll find a way
Well, they'll
to
trade back
draft.
to
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Trade back to 50 picks and get them anyway. So I mean, that would be a little bit too soon for me. I think that the I don't have a very comfortable projection for either of them at this point.
Yeah.
Even though
An interesting.
it's
Sorry.
interesting. No, go ahead.
Interesting guy that I wanted to mention too is the OHL's leading scorer who doesn't get any kind of like hype is Klepov as well.
Yeah.
He doesn't he seems to like fall in the rankings from that like 15 to 30 range on like everybody's board. He has some skating concerns obviously, but still did a hell of a job with a really good who's it, Dima Zilkin, who's his center?
Yeah, Dima Zilkin, who's not draft eligible until next year. So, Klepov's a really interesting case, because he's like American, but he's also Russian, and there's a chance that he could play in the under 18 Worlds, but like, I'm also not sure how like committed he is to being an American internationally and all that different stuff. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, the skating is probably the primary concern for him, because the hockey sense, the patience, the vision, the hand skills, the shot, all super high end traits. But yeah, the skating is an issue. And I also think, it's just like, can he compete well enough? Like, is he competitive enough to overcome the skating shortcomings? Because skill can't do it alone. Work ethic has to come into the range there. And I like the player. That's certainly a guy I would be thinking about in that range, just because I think there's so much high end offensive potential. Who else doesn't skate really well? Nikita Kucherov. So, like, it's just kind of like, do I think Klepov's Kucherov? No. I actually think McKenna might be closer to Kucherov than.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's like, but I think Klepov has some high end traits that I would be willing to take a chance on in the teens.
Yeah, especially if you're like the Sharks, where you've got 2 picks right there. You pick a
Yep.
safer option. You pick a Klepov. You're
Yep.
kind of golden in the first round if you're sitting
Yeah,
there.
you're feeling good. I think if you take a couple of swing, like I especially in the position the Sharks are in now, you want to hit on everything, but why not swing on upside?
Mhm.
Well, I assume the Sharks will actually trade one of those picks for a
Probably.
more veteran defenseman. But anyway, Chris, I want to thank you so much for your time here. I understand that the Sharks' best case scenario is for Edmonton to lose every game the rest of the season, for Edmonton to win the lottery, and for the Sharks to stay right where they are in the playoffs. So that's what we're kind of hoping for.
If Edmonton wins another draft lottery, I might jump off a bridge. So
yeah, but the Sharks will get the pick though. So
That's true.
Yeah, well, oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
it's unprotected.
Yeah, but either way, even if they do it that way, I'm still going to be jumping somewhere.
I think we have 2 more quick questions, and then we'll let you go.
Okay.
My question for you real quick is, if you had to pick one of the ones that we've been talking about, for the Sharks, for the window with Celebrini, who would you pick?
Oh, best fit. Good question.
Best fit, I
Yeah,
guess.
best fit, man, that's a good one. Yeah, because I mean, like, my lean would be to Reed, because I think he's the best option. Like, I think he's the best D there.
Yeah.
I think the two-way skills are good enough, while his offensive game is more. But I look at Sam Dickinson too, and I'm like, oh, man, I don't, is it too much of the same thing? I'm gonna say Reed anyway.
Right.
I just think I do think he's the best option. But like, honestly, like a great consolation prize. I mean, like, I would probably lean towards Carl's, just as like, if I'm not getting Reed, I think Carl's. Verhoff, the one thing about Verhoff is I really like the player. I like the offensive toolkit. I like the pack. Like, I definitely have a little bit more concern of late about the hockey sense. And that to me is going to be hard for me to get over when we're talking about these final decisions. But I think really at this point, if you could get any one of those defensemen that we talked about in the 5, they all bring a little something different, and they all give you something strong. I think like I would really like Rudolph a lot. I've liked Rudolph all season. And Smits is a real, weapon. I think that's a guy that can help a team play in tough, hard games, and do well. So, I think that they're all really good options, even with Dickinson in the mix.
Got it.
Okay, who's your number 1 pick? And we'll say bye to you.
My number 1 pick right now is McKenna, and it's only because I don't feel like anyone has significantly jumped the line. McKenna has the highest offensive upside of any player in this draft, has the best skill, highest end hockey sense, but there are absolutely concerns about his game, his ability to reach that ceiling, it's one of those things where I feel like I'd rather pick 3rd than 1st this year. Just because I think it's a really, because you're either going to have to make that hard decision with the number 1 overall pick, face all the criticism, all the different things that that you would have to get, or you just get the next best option, which seems like a lot easier. The path of least resistance for me. Never, I'm Midwestern. I don't like confrontation. I would like the least resistance. So, so that's where I'm at. But yeah, I think if you had to have me make the pick today, I do think that McKenna gives me the most bang for my buck at number 1, because I think the offensive upside is so high.
So Chris Peters would not be a good GM for the Vancouver Canucks.
No, I would no. Let me. Yeah, I don't think I'd be a good GM. Period. Let somebody else make the decision.
But especially the Canucks, though, if that's your first ever number 1 pick in your history.
Oh my goodness, man, that is what an unenviable position that is. So yeah.
All right, man. Thanks a lot, buddy. So I'll see you soon. All right.
All right, sounds good, guys. Yep. Thanks a lot. Great to see you guys. Take it easy.
Okay. Boiler finger gun. April 3rd, 3 p.m. The Sharks are in a playoff spot right now. They have a game in hand on the Kings and the Predators, who are their closest competitors for that spot. The Blues, the Jets, and there's so many teams. One other team is still the Kraken are still in the hunt. They're still kind of reasonably in it. All right. So last week we all jumped, you and I, Zubair. Sadly,
Hey, I said I held home.
Did you really?
Yeah, I was like, I mentioned the playoffs.
All right. I jumped off board. All right, I was a coward.
Yeah. I said I'm staying on. Yeah, I said I doubted like you before the Olympics with that losing streak and then this losing streak, but I was like,
hey, you don't need to turn the screw. All right, I admitted I was a coward. All right, I was wrong. All right, all right. So obviously, the Sharks have just won their last 3 games. They beat St. Louis, Anaheim, and Toronto. That goes back to 4-game winning streak. They beat Columbus. So I assume that you are still on board that the Sharks will make the playoffs this year. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am. I'm still on board. I was on board. I knew they were going to go on some sort of hot streak after that losing streak. Schedule gets a little easier. I mean, there's no point in jumping off the bandwagon at this point. So, once you go through the Randy Hahn Rubicon, you're not going back. And you know what really got me was what Randy said, which I mentioned last week on the podcast, which made me stay on to believe is, I haven't believed in a long time. And this Sharks team and this Sharks season has just been so fun to watch. I mean, the Anaheim game the other night, obviously the Pittsburgh game and the earlier in the season, the Montreal game. There's been so much fun, exciting hockey. And Randy, what was going through my head when I was doubting again with the losses and the losing streaks was what he said that it reminded him of, which was, the 93-94 greatest turnaround team. That was the Igor Larionov, Sergei Makarov, Garpenlov,
upset the Red Wings in the
Lynch.
first round. Yeah, number 8. I say number 1. Yep.
Yeah, and I remember, that very well. I was young, but I remember it, and I remember, that season was down to the wire. Right at the end, sneaking into the playoffs, and he felt something, and so I that's what kept me on it. I was like, Randy feels something. I'm going to trust that.
Okay, that's fair. That's right. Even that's why I got onto the bandwagon for a little bit, just because there is something about this team. There is a vibe. There is as Ryan Rosasi said yesterday after the game, that they believe, and you can tell, and that matters, that they believe, but also, too, that they have some of the elements that help you believe, like they have one of the best players in the world in Macklin Celebrini, and they are together. They like each other. They are clearly playing for each other, too. They feel bad, it seems like, when they make mistakes that mess it up for their teammates. And there is definitely team of destiny vibes, which I wrote about after the Anaheim game. I mean, the first team in NHL history to win 3 straight games, Columbus, St. Louis, and Anaheim, with a game-winning goal less than 90 seconds left in the game. This is obviously on the heels of the greatest regular season comeback in Sharks history, the Pittsburgh game. And so it adds up that, well, definitely the destiny is theirs now. If they win out, which of course I'm not expecting them to do that because that's going to be a tall order, but basically it's their playoff spot to lose at this exact moment. So, okay, we're going to have Keegan jump on in a little bit, and so we will ask him. I wish Dan Boyle was on here to answer this question, but you said you asked Dan yesterday, so Dan is still...
Yeah, Dan still no, but...
Negative Nancy.
But he did tell me that he wants to be proven wrong.
Well, we all want to be proven wrong. I want to be proven wrong, too, so...
Yeah.
Or right, or whatever I am.
Yeah.
I don't know what I am anymore. But anyway, though, it has been an outstanding week of Sharks hockey. Before we get to kind of our main topics of conversation, we're going to talk Macklin Celebrini and his MVP case, whether or not the Sharks make the playoffs. Also, too, we're going to chat about whether or not Chernyshov, Celebrini, and Smith is going to be a Stanley Cup caliber first line or not, which is a huge bar. And finally, there's a funny Austin Matthews kind of speculation that's out there. Interesting, worth talking about, that we'll get to the very end of the show. But before we talk about all those things, let's just talk about some of the great Sharks hockey that we've seen this past week. The first guy that I want to shout out is Colin Graff. And Colin Graff hitting 20 goals yesterday against the Maple Leafs. And man, what more can you say about Colin? I've written a couple of stories I really liked over the last month about Colin. First, about talking with his mom, Terry, just about him growing up and childhood pictures and all that stuff. But then, really, one of the favorite stories I've ever written, and I love writing these kind of stories that kind of blow up, like, just, how do you say it? I don't know. Wrong, wrong statements, I guess, erroneous statements. For years we heard about Sharks can't develop anybody. Fire John McCarthy. Fire everybody, right? And along comes Colin Graff. Colin Graff, an undrafted free agent. And Colin Graff that came out of school as a NCAA, he was a playmaker. He never penalty killed in college. And yes, a lot of teams want to call him Graff out of college, so that's nothing special. And he chose the Sharks. A big part of it was just because the Sharks were terrible, and Colin saw a pathway to playing time, which is all obvious, right? But the Sharks, if you read the story, it's called "The Transformation of Colin Graff," and at every level of Sharks front office and development, you see them turn Colin Graff into a top-notch penalty killer, into a 20-goal scorer, into a guy that is going to be a middle six winger, I believe, for a playoff team, for a Sharks playoff team, for possibly a Stanley Cup winning team for a long time, because he's just good at a lot of different things that you need. He's not just a playmaker. He's not just a scorer, right? And so what I liked about that story in particular is that talked with Louis Mass, Barracuda assistant coach, who molded Colin Graff into a penalty killer. But it's not Louis Mass that saw the potential of Graff as a penalty killer. Spoke with Mike Greer, and Mike said, "Yeah, that's something that we saw in Colin Graff's cup of coffee with the Sharks that year when they signed him. That he had some potential to do that, and so we identified that this was something that maybe he could do, and let's give him to our Barracuda coach to teach him." And Colin deserves a ton of credit too, and most of it, Colin took it on himself to do it. Louis Mass talks about how Colin is one of the few guys that when reviewing penalty killing tape, he wants to watch everybody's shift, not just his own penalty killing shift.
I thought that was
everybody.
And I thought that was one of the best parts in your piece, Shangers. Like, I thought that was fantastic. Like, who does that? Like, what's so special?
Honestly, not a lot of guys. Yeah.
Yeah, you could see it. Like his willingness to watch tape on everyone and learn from everything. I mean, I just thought that was great insight that I didn't know until I read your piece.
Right. And then also, too, little things were, okay, where is John McCarthy involved? Well, John was telling us early last season, you could just tell when coaches talk about players, just who they trust. And if you look at what John McCarthy was saying about Colin Graff in the first half of last season, that was a guy that they trusted. And moving on to, okay, where is Ryan Rosofsky's part in this, right? Where is the Sharks coaching staff part in this? And Colin talks about, it wasn't a linear path for Colin up to 20 goals, up to being a top penalty killer for the Sharks. First dozen games of the season, he was healthy scratched once. He was on the fourth line for a game. He still hadn't quite established himself as an everyday player yet. And they had a meeting, Colin Graff and Ryan Rosofsky, and Rosofsky kind of pointed out, okay, these are things that we need you to do. We need you to get inside more. We need you to do this a little bit more of. We like you, but we need just a little more out of you. And Colin did that. And actually, funny enough, that game where Colin really kind of took off, maybe some coincidence, but this was right after the meeting with Warsofsky. And also, too, that was the game that Michael Misa was supposed to play, but Michael Misa got hurt in morning skate. And so suddenly the Sharks had to run 11-7 that day, which opened up a lot more playing time for Colin Graff that day, because I think Colin was actually scheduled to line up on the fourth line. And Colin plays 16 minutes that night. He makes an incredible, I don't know if you guys remember it, but shorthanded, incredible assist to Ty Dellandrea, shorthanded. And since then, I think Colin Graf has been maybe the highest scorer. Maybe Will Smith has passed. He was second though. When I wrote that article, he was second to Macklin Celebrini in points since that time, along with Tyler Toffoli. But anyway, so just want to give a shout out to Colin Graf, but really to the entire Scott Fitzgerald, who is actually, we talk about this with Chris Peters. Scott Fitzgerald is the one that pushed the Bruins to sign Torrey Krug. And we talk about Torrey Krug in association to Eric Pohlkamp. And Scott Fitzgerald was the one that said, Mike Reard mentions this to me, that he was like, yeah, you got to sign Colin Graf. So really, every level of Sharks development is touched on here. Barracuda, front office. So anyway, so really enjoy that piece. Okay, so besides Colin Graf,
well, I just wanted to add to Graf a little bit. So, I mean, I think the other thing that's so amazing about him is his adaptability that we've heard before, and his ability to play, like you said, fourth line, first line, second line, third. He's literally played all throughout. And then also, again, to the development staff, how Mass encouraged him to watch, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Claude Giroux, Mitch Marner particularly, as potential comp players on the PK to sort of study. Again, going to your point about how this is everyone in the organization, to even being able to attract him, because, there's 20 plus teams that wanted to sign Colin Graf. And,
David Quinn, a big part of that.
Yeah, correct. And their ability to be like, hey, be straightforward with Colin and be like, hey, we'll give you every opportunity, but nothing's a guarantee. And I just appreciate that the Sharks' sort of candidness and honesty, which is, ultimately why he wanted to come to the Sharks.
David Quinn's two great gifts to the Sharks: getting a Norris Trophy season out of Erik Karlsson, i.e. Sam Dickinson, and I guess Colin Graf. So
there you go. Exactly. But yeah, all right. So who's great stuff, Graffers? Who's next on our list?
Well, we can just shout out the entire fourth line that's really taken off here. Ostapchuk, Gaudreau, Gaudette. Ostapchuk especially, you just had to love his development. And this again blows up another, like, okay, hey, they did it with Colin Graf. They developed one player that wasn't a high draft pick. Okay, look at Ostapchuk. So, and that's, when Ostapchuk came to the Sharks last year, he obviously was raw. You saw the potential in there, but he obviously was raw. You can't look at Ostapchuk now and tell me that he is not a much better player than he was last year. And a lot of that is Ostapchuk was in the playoffs with the Barracuda. They sent him down. He started the season with the Barracuda.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, you and me have both been Ostapchuk fans, from day one, and like that trade. Even though I know many Sharks fans did not, because Ederson was so loved and has just some great scoring touch. But Ostapchuk has really developed into, everything you wanted him. He had the tools, but he's gotten faster. I saw him working on his skating quite a bit, this last year. And even after the season ended last year, I saw him on the ice working on skating. And you can really see that start to take effect. He's quicker. He definitely has another jump, another step. He's really taken the role as as the enforcer too, since Revo's been gone, lately. And then his scoring touch, his ability to somewhat play simple, but I love when, Gaudette's on that line with Gaudreau, who you and me talked about. Gaudreau was, I think, the best Shark during that losing streak.
Absolutely.
That's something that I saw. And the reason I thought he was so good, too, is because the games were getting tighter. You're playing meaningful games, and that's where someone's game like Gaudreau's really shines. And the fourth line has looked quick. They have a scoring touch. I mean, Ostapchuk had a great third period center pass scoring chance yesterday. And that's because he's driving wide and he's pushing people back with his speed and his size, and is able to create space for some of the others. And he's looked great on the PK as well. Just fantastic. Hey, Keegan. What's up, buddy?
What's up, guys?
Hey.
I have made it.
All right.
Keegan is here. The podcast can start.
We can finally actually start talking about important topics now.
Keegan skipped the good talk about Gaudreau.
Yeah,
so.
That's true. Yes, I
no, actually, we're still in the middle of it, actually.
Oh, okay.
So Ostapchuk, though, you mentioned, I see a little more offense out of him. Obviously, the numbers are still low, and right now he is a 4C. he doesn't produce enough to be a 3C, but I see more offense now than I saw last year, obviously, and even the beginning of this year, he's making a few more plays. So I feel like there can be one more level that is within reach. Like we're seeing the glimmers of it. This is not just like a hope, wishful thinking. If he has one more really good summer, then maybe he can get up to a 3C level, which would be just remarkable considering all the other things he does well. Warsawski mentioned a play yesterday, and we actually saw this like when the Sharks acquired him, that he was really hard to, if he got a hold of you, even last year, right? Like you weren't getting through him, or he could go through you, right? And so Warsawski mentioned a play yesterday to close off the Toronto game where he just went through, I don't know which Maple Leaf, and that iced the game. And that's something that he can do, and not a lot of Sharks can do that. I did also mention too, I put this in a story a month ago. I was talking to a scout. This was a month ago. This isn't even this recent stretch of play by Ostapchuk. The scout flat out said, I'd give you a second round pick for Ostapchuk right now. And that's how valuable a guy. Look at what Michael McCarron went for, right? And a lot of people question, oh my God, Michael McCarron, second round pick. But fourth line centers that are big, that kill plays, that are reliable, that's really, really valuable in the playoffs. And we're seeing that with Ostapchuk, and he's just 22, I believe, still. So just scratching the surface there.
And he's always been good in the neutral zone, but that's been a skill set of his that we saw last year. But his ability to get pucks deep and keep them down there and run a cycle and drive the net and forecheck heavier, he's just gotten better. I don't see one area of him that has not improved throughout the course of this year. So it's been really fun to watch him.
It's a great reminder to be patient too, because all these things we saw signs of last year, even though, there's a lot of hiccups in his play last year too, but last year he fought Tom Wilson. So
I don't know if you can call that one a fight. You can call that one a...
No, but I'm just saying though that because Zubair shouted out like since Ryan Reeves has gone out, that Ostapchuk's kind of helped take up the mantle of like, I'm going to stand up for the guys, but that was already there because he was fighting Tom Wilson last year for the Sharks. Yeah, this defensive kind of his speed, his ability to just kind of blow up plays defensively, that was there last year in what I saw with the Sharks. And it just needed to be more consistent. He had to get faster, a lot of little things, but things that he did. So. Yep.
Do we talk about Gaudette yet? Gaudette yet?
Not so much, but Gaudette, I mean, look at that guy, 17 goals, fourth line role.
He's been doing, I've liked him all year. There's been ups and downs, obviously, but like guy can score, and he's had that shot for the whole year, all the way through, pretty consistently.
He's had it his whole life. He won Hobie Baker.
Yeah, I mean, so I think he's a perfect addition to that line. Kind of rounds out the defensive minds, Goodrow, the speed and physicality of Ostapchuk, and he's like the guy that if the puck finds him in the neutral zone or in the center of the ice, he can put it away for you. So I like his play too. I think it's a good line overall. I'm happy about it for sure.
And I think one thing that goes kind of unnoticed sometimes is it's hard to produce offense on a fourth line because that's not always your goal and your role. But, he still is able to make plays. And when you're playing against another team's fourth line, a checking line that's coming after you, it's hard to pull a toe drag or dangle someone. And he's able to remain calm on that line and create plays. Mm-hmm. I think that's what he did so well with the Senators as well. Last year, and we love that acquisition again, and you're starting to see it come together with Goodrow and Ostapchuk. Now that line has a little bit more speed as well, and I think Gaudette's really reaping the benefits of that line getting faster as a result of Ostapchuk being out there with Goodrow. Like they're moving.
Yeah, when Reeves was on the line, I got what Warsawski said about they play the right way, right? And I think they did. And there's a physicality there, right, with Reeves and Goodrow and Ostapchuk. But with Gaudette adds a little bit of that wild card, a little bit. And Gaudette's not too risky a player, too. He's safe enough. You mentioned like some of the moves he makes, but he's not like trying to sauce it through the neutral zone and getting them in trouble, right? Like he's learned that when he's going to make these kind of plays, he's got to do it in the offensive zone, which takes some players a time to learn that, right? So a little bit of wild card, too. A good wild card.
Is Gaudette the better Klim Kostin? Like, remember how I know, but I mean, like, remember how we were always like
comparison.
I know.
Though,
but we were always like, oh, the skill level's there, but he keeps making these decisions that were horrible, you know? And like, couldn't keep him in the lineup, but like, Gaudette has enough skill, and he's not a risky player that you can. So
It took Adam a long time, right? You look
Yeah.
at his career track, right, and he had to be cut by or waived by a number of teams, and it wasn't until he went to, I think it was Springfield, the St. Louis organization, like 3 years ago, and went from like a good AHL player to like a AHL MVP type.
Yeah.
I think he popped in like 40 plus for Springfield, and that's when he kind of figured it out. But
kind of reminds me of
yeah.
Ryan Donato's story too. I mean, Donato's a little higher of a level too, but a little late bloomer, bounced
higher
around.
pick, right? Too, I think, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, they're both the high picks, I think. Anyway, go on. So
yeah, but same thing. Like he bounced around, took a little while to get a really good lineup spot, and always had the skills, some finishing ability, but just couldn't find it. And yeah, I like Gaudette in that line for sure.
All right, now we gotta also talk about Nick Leddy.
Oh
here,
yeah,
and
I gotta eat some lumps. I fucking love Nick Leddy.
I think a lot good for you to represent a lot of people, because honestly, like I didn't know what, I didn't know what was going on one day. Sat Mukmu doing for Leddy in Edmonton, but I've been around enough to know that like the coaching staff, again, they number one, they want to win. So if they made a decision, they've seen something that suggests to them that Nick Leddy can help them win a game more than Shakir Mukumadulin. And even though that seemed crazy because Nick's played one pro game in the last 2 months, they've seen Leddy in practice. They've seen, all that kind of stuff, right? So, and since Leddy has come back, he's been, I mean, you can argue he's actually been the Sharks' best most consistent defenseman, at least.
Are they 4-1 since he returned, or?
No, I mean he came back in a losing streak. The Edmonton loss, right? But even like Zubair was there for that. The game against the Flyers, where what was it? Owen Tippett put one in past Leddy, right? But that wasn't even, if you watch that play carefully, that wasn't even though like Leddy's the last jersey you see before Owen Tippett blows by him. So always everyone blames the defenseman. But I talked actually with Jason Demers about this too. Like if you watch that play, I think it was Zegras that makes actually not a very good pass to Tippett, and Leddy actually blocks that pass. The problem with Leddy is that he blocked it right to Owen Tippett. But that's not, again, you don't blame, that's not like bad defense, and he basically deflected it right into Owen Tippett's wheelhouse. And then Nick Leddy makes a very normal human reaction. Like he reaches for a puck just a millisecond, and that's all that Owen Tippett needed, because Owen Tippett's a really good player. But like, so that's a play where like that might have been like Nick Leddy's worst play of the last 8 games he's played. But yeah, I mean, I think you can argue he's been the most consistent defenseman. I mean, obviously we've seen Dmitry Orlov struggle quite a bit recently, right? And Mukmadulin has good games up and down. Mariel is always, doing his best, but Mariel is also kind of overtaxed, right? Sometimes. And so, Nick's definitely looked like he's had a little more pop in his step since he's been back.
Yeah, I think, Sheng, we were talking at the Philly game before the Owen Tippett goal, and we were like,
we thought he was actually pretty good
really
against.
good.
Yeah.
And then particularly what I thought, he came off surgery last year, and coming back this season, like he definitely didn't look like himself at the beginning of the season. I think going down to the AHL and getting some rest too, he took some time off a little bit.
Just practicing and not playing, maybe. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. At that age and going through those injuries, like Boilers talked about this before too, you take longer to recover. And you really saw him, like his skating looks the best it's ever looked into.
For sure.
You can tell his edge work, his speed, he's had some great controlled entries. He's had some nice helpers. That one to Macklin was nasty.
There, right? Yeah.
And he's getting behind, he's getting deep, he's using his edges, and that's his best asset. He's had some spinoramas, which again, great edge work. He just didn't have that at the beginning of the season. He looked slower, and he just
his reaction time earlier on looked really behind the play. Like he looked like he was struggling to move the puck and kept getting it at his feet and couldn't make a decision. And now it seems like he's back to that quick thinking transition mind that Leddy's always been known for, and good defense too. So they are 4-3-1 with Leddy in the lineup, but he did play 22 minutes against St. Louis on the 30th. So that's pretty good. That's the game he had the assist in as well. So yeah, Yeah, I mean that's not nothing for him coming back, and Sharks look good with him in there. So I did not expect it. I don't know who did, but heck, the Sharks coaching staff, I guess.
The coaching staff did, right? Yeah, and I did want to. I didn't get to say this the last episode with Jason Demers that. I mean, I think Leddy. I would rather have honestly this Leddy as your number 7 defenseman than John Klingberg. And I think that what Leddy does add, and Ryan Rosowski talks about this a lot, that in general with breakouts, like you want a predictability.
Yeah.
And Leddy is a predictable player, and as much like John Klingberg's highs may be higher than Leddy still. Like I'm still always, no matter what happens in Klingberg this season, and no matter what fans say about him, I'm still going to remember him rinsing Sidney Crosby in overtime.
That was awesome.
Right? Isn't that the best? Like, you said Sidney Crosby. I mean, that still is still. I watched that replay. I still can't believe that Klingberg did that to Sidney Crosby. But anyway, though, yeah, but Klingberg has never been known as a predictable player, right? Klingberg has always been sort of a how do you say it, a maverick, and when it works, it really works, right? Historically for him, but like obviously he's aging and he's not quite the player that he was. So so I think if it comes down to it, in the JD plan, that Leddy has really put a good, and it's only been it's just been 8 games or so, right? Like you said, Keegan, but like it's been, I mean, this recent run by the Sharks, this recent stretch, right? Like I said, he's been a big part of it. I mean, yeah, I don't know how you can take him out of the lineup right now. He's playable ahead of, honestly, I would take Mukhammadulin out of the lineup. Orlov has struggled. I'm not saying I would take Orlov out. I'm just saying that like he's just been that kind of consistent and reliable. Like the only play that I can think of that was like, oh, whoa, that was not good was the very first game against Edmonton when I think Henrique jumped him, but that was his first game in NHL game in 2 months. So
no, yeah, he's looked good.
Definitely has, for sure.
Yeah, I would add too. I talked with a scout about him. I don't want to overblow it and say that he's back to being Nick Leddy from 5 years ago. The scout just says, "Okay, he's playable again."
Yeah, right. He's found his game. Sometimes you gotta wait and find it, and maybe the rest can go one way or the other, right? They get super rusty, and then it's just never the same, or they find it. So
yeah.
I'll definitely chalk him up as another, successful reclamation project by the Sharks organization.
It's looking like it. Like, let's wait till the end of the season, but yeah,
it really is. Like,
if he remains playable, for sure.
And then again, knowing his path, like I think that what this organization does really well is they have an individualized path for each player, and and I just remember hearing how Nick Leddy took the, being put on waivers like so well and so professionally, and still wanted what's best for the team, and taking that path is very unconventional, but still giving him an opportunity to come back. And I'm sure those discussions were had. And yeah, again, just great, very well-run organization, and making sure that they have an individualized path for the players to give them an opportunity, with even veterans like Leddy. And then you're seeing him play great. I love it all around.
There were a lot of fans that were complaining about why is he playing for the Barracuda, but like I didn't really understand the complaints for that, because Nick Leddy did not sign here to play for the Barracuda, and so if Nick Leddy feels like for his body or for whatever, he just needs more, like stay out of game action, even if it's as simple as I don't want to get hurt playing for the Barracuda because then I can't get traded at a trade deadline somewhere else to play somewhere else. Well, he's a veteran and he's earned that, and so I had no issue with that. But yeah, I guess if you can look at Leddy and Klingberg as a conglomerate acquisition, which you can't. You have Klingberg's middle season with Leddy's late season renaissance. That's a pretty good defenseman that they've cobbled together there. So
yeah.
But I want to mention too, do we have any other players that we want to mention in this kind of winning streak that has stood out? We will talk about Macklin, we'll talk about Chernishoff and Smith, but anybody else?
I think you touched on it a little bit about Klingberg not being in the lineup. For this win streak. And I think it is important to see that, like, you mentioned predictability, and the D has looked really good in this win streak in terms of more predictability. Obviously some pizzas up the middle of the ice by Orlov, but I mean, Orlov's still your best defenseman.
He is.
So,
I like how he bounced back against Toronto too.
He did. Yeah, he did. And so, I think it's also interesting to see, I think that without Klingberg in meaningful games, it could be beneficial to not play a high risk game at this time of the season, which I think is you can see the Sharks kind of buckle down and play a much simpler game without Klingberg, and I think that's benefited them and somewhat contributed to this win streak as well.
Yeah. I don't want to put too much on just one player being in and out and too much credit or too much blame, because I don't think that's fair either. But I like I said, I do see what you're saying though, in those terms.
One more,
yes.
just real quick, is kudos to Wenberg for finding a shooting game. Like, he's got 4 goals in the last 5 games. Guy who doesn't shoot the puck. He's got 17 goals in the season. He's been a good power play option.
Per high.
Yeah, found an actual scoring touch in this win streak as well. So he's looked really good. A perfect 2-3C, 2C obviously, but good to get Misa as he doesn't have to eat all the minutes because Wenberg's struggling. They kind of switch on and off in those 2-3C roles. So I like his play lately too.
Can I shout out this Wenberg play that actually, I don't know if you guys remember, because it was in a bad. It was in the Nashville game where the Sharks got rocked, so it didn't matter. But I asked Alex about it, and he remembered it. So if you guys remember it, it's such a play that this is the difference between, actually, honestly, a guy like Michael Misa was still learning how to play defense at NHL level, and a veteran like Wenberg and his instincts. So basically, it was a Nashville 2-on-1, and Wenberg is the back checker to even it up.
Mm-hmm.
And so Wenberg's doing his job. He's skating, he evens it up. But nobody picks up the third Nashville guy, the trailer. Nobody picks him up. So Wenberg, again, these are instincts. Wenberg kind of leaves his man, and he recognizes the trailer. And he recognizes that Nashville's going to try to hit the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was Yossi or somebody obvious like that. But anyway, so Wenberg blocks the shot of the trailer. He kills the play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's defensive veteran, whatever, acumen, awareness, Barclay Goodrow kind of stuff that fans complain about. But that's the stuff that you've had to have played in the NHL for a long time typically to make that kind of read. Because Wenberg is definitely taking a chance, because it's a 3-on-2. Yeah. So he's got to kind of pick out who he's going to try to attack defensively. It was an absolutely brilliant play, but the score was 5-1 Nashville. But I asked Alex about it. Alex knew what I was talking about, because that is just that's a play that Alex Wenberg probably wouldn't have made at 22.
Mm-hmm.
At Michael Misa, I'm not trying to. Michael Misa's been great, but when people talk about, you got to play Misa ahead of Wenberg, I'm like, no, you can't. You're not going to do that in a playoff chase. As much as Michael Misa has proven or has shown flashes, he's not at that level. That's why Wenberg plays ahead of him. And Zubair, we got to continue this conversation some other time, not today, but second best Sharks forward, second best Sharks player. I think most nights it's Wenberg.
Yeah,
it's not Will Smith. It's not William Macklin. It's not whoever, right? Yeah, so.
Yeah. That's not where we disagree. It's who's the top 5 is where we disagree.
That's some other time.
Wenberg's are definitely the number 2. But yeah, no. You know who does that surprisingly well? If you watch. I watch all the playoff games every year, and I still feel like he doesn't get enough credit for it. It's Connor McDavid.
Mm-hmm.
Connor McDavid is so good and has the skating ability to close gaps defensively.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen plays where, similar to that Wenberg play, where there's a defensive lapse on his team. And I saw one where, he's going for the guy on the right side in a 3-on-2. And he chases that guy, and then Nurse also overcommits to that guy. So now it's a 1-on-3. He reads it and has the skating ability to get across and take away the pass. And that's when you're making reads to also what your team is doing, like a play on that Wenberg. It's not just what they're doing. It's who is the most dangerous guy in this play? And it may not be a typical, hey, just take the open pass, or, these are in-game reads that are much more complex, and you're reading so much. And some of that stuff you also, you can learn over the course of your career, but some people just never learn it either.
Right.
Some people just have those reads. And yeah, I do know what play you're talking about too.
Yeah, for the
it's-
record,
yeah.
I think Michael Misa will learn to do it, but
Yeah,
it just
yeah.
right now though in a playoff race that's the guy that you go with. And I agree with you with McDavid. I think he's not a perfect defensive player by any stretch, but that he's underrated in that way. Like I don't think you make it to 2 straight finals if you are as one-dimensional as people paint him to be.
Yeah.
So before we enter our discussion about Macklin, Macklin. I just want to do a quick shout out to the Sharks, all the Sharks, and it's not to put any focus on guys who didn't put on the Pride tape, but I don't know if there's a Pride night that I've seen around the league where that many Sharks, that many players put on the tape. I think it was like 15 players, 15 Sharks. And so I just think that's awesome. So good on you guys. And yeah.
Very cool. I guess you do see a lot of that's because you go around all the rinks and everything. So you do see a lot of Pride nights and a lot of other like military appreciation nights and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
But it's like typically though on these nights, so maybe there's like a half dozen, maybe like last year I think the Sharks had maybe a half dozen players put it on.
Wow.
So I just think it's cool that it was stronger this year for whatever reason. I don't know why. It's not a lot. It's a lot of same players from last year who doesn't mean that they're not supportive of Pride and all that kind of stuff, right? They didn't have it. They had it this year. Who knows why? But I just think that's a cool
More people
sight
watching too.
Yeah,
like they probably are. Like there's more people showing up to the tank and maybe,
yeah.
Or also maybe they just care more, right? Like I don't know when that Pride night was last year, but maybe they care more.
Yeah. But and that's actually another shout out to Alex Wenberg, who we know genuinely cares about this stuff. He's the Sharks King Clancy nominee, so another shout out to Alex there. But okay, so here's a discussion that's come up a lot. And,
well, wait, do you want to quickly check in with Keegan on where you are? Let's do this real quick.
Oh.
Yeah.
Randy Hahn Rubicon.
Where are you at?
The Sharks are in the playoffs right now.
Did you guys switch at all, or have you stayed the same?
I switched.
I stayed
I'm
last week.
I'm a coward. So I admit it. I'm a coward.
Give me a second. I'm gonna look at the standings. Oof.
Okay.
Oh man, it's really close. Like my brain wants to say yes. My heart wants to say yes.
Something.
I'm thinking because I'm looking at the things here. I don't believe in any of the teams beneath the Sharks more than I believe in the Sharks right now. And they are one.
They got a game in hand.
hand. The Sharks are going to make the playoffs. I crossed the Rubicon.
Yes. All right.
Welcome. Watch it. I don't deserve to be the welcome. I'm like Zubair is allowing me onto the boat, but Zubair's
if you asked me last week, I think we did ask last week.
They asked me.
But they've been like. It's just the chips are falling where they're winning at the right time. There's 8 games left in the season. They're in a playoff spot. They have the highest win percentage of those teams remaining.
Yep.
They have yes, Nashville has been playing better, but I still don't believe that they have.
Nashville is just coming off a 4-game losing streak.
We gotta go through Nashville if we want to make it.
Obviously,
twice. Yeah. So that's gonna be key.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to say yes. I've crossed it. Let's do it. We're going to go to the playoffs, baby. And if they don't, then we're getting a top 11 pick, and that's fine too, which we talked about with Chris Peters.
Yeah, so Chris Peters, right? Yeah, the Sharks are 17th right now for a pick. And if they miss, though, they go all the way to 11th. That's how many Eastern teams.
Which is amazing. It's found money. It really is. It's like.
Yeah, either way works. Either way works,
fine.
Right? Yeah.
Such a weird season that, like, a week ago, we're like, top 10 pick, and now we're in playoffs.
I know.
That's why I booked Chris Peters.
It's so strange.
That's
great.
I have to admit that I gave up a little bit, and you guys can rag me all you want. Randy can put it in my face if it happens. So I'm glad. Look, I am glad for the success of this team. So they're good guys, and they deserve it. They've earned it. So
when Macklin gets hot, he is legitimately one of the hardest players to stop in the league, and we see that in this hot streak. So I can only hope that like the post-Olympic, I won't even call it it's like a little slump. It's just he's played a lot of hockey, so much hockey across the world. So like I think that has kind of worn off now, and he's back into Macklin form. So he's hard to stop, but he elevates everything about this team. So that's why we're going to talk about him, probably.
So let's go into the next question. Celebrini MVP no matter what. What I will say,
playoffs or not. Yeah, that's a question mark, I think, because I think if he makes the Sharks make the playoffs, I think he is going to win it.
Wow, that's bold. I really
okay.
I think so.
Let's check the odds real quick. FanDuel has Macklin Celebrini at plus 850 right now for the Hart Trophy. Obviously, if like to Shang's point, if he drives San Jose into a playoff spot, I think that number could drop pretty fast. So I think
Who's around him like in that?
Nathan MacKinnon's a minus 112.
He's the favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a favorite. Connor McDavid's plus 1400.
He's the
Kucherov's a plus.
Kucherov, right, is the second. Favorite, right?
Yeah, at a plus 130.
Has Kucherov won a Hart before?
I believe so.
I think he did win.
He won it like 3 years ago.
He's always kind of right there for the conversation.
Okay, so I could go first on this one.
Yeah.
I think even if the Sharks make the playoffs, Celebrini doesn't win it.
I think he will. I think that's the dragging line. That's going to change voters' mind, because you have to remember this is a voted upon thing.
Yeah.
And I recuse myself from the FanDuel stuff, but like I vote on it. And for me right now, that's the line for me. And some Sharks fans will be like, "No, he's the MVP no matter what." But we can talk about that. But
yeah, so why no?
I predict for voters.
Yeah. So the reason I think it's a no is because I think Nathan MacKinnon is just having too unreal of a season. I think that, having 50 goals, a plus 55, and the fact that they're first place in the league, and also he's playing penalty kill. I think that matters too. I think if I were to vote on it, like I don't vote, FYI, Shangers does. But if I was, even if the Sharks make it, I don't think there's a more valuable player in the league than Nathan MacKinnon this season.
Well, someone would say, what about they have Cale Makar too? And they just have a way deeper team.
They do. No, they do.
Netches,
but
they have Brock Nelson.
They absolutely do. But MacKinnon, if you look at McKinnon's numbers across the board, I think that there's not a more valuable player in the league this season. I think that, Macklin's impact on this team in terms of scoring percentage, larger impact. But I think that if you put Nathan MacKinnon in a team that's worse, I still think he's having an incredible season. I think obviously Cal Makar and Nashis is a big part of that, but Nathan MacKinnon's just a monster this year. I mean, their team doesn't lose.
Don't you think Kucherov? Well, they have been losing recently, but Kucherov and McDavid are kind of.
If I were voting, I do think that Shang, you're right that it does matter. The Sharks have to make the playoffs. Or Macklin Celebrini won't win it if they don't make the playoffs. That's just I think that's the way it goes, no matter what. I think if I was voting, I legitimately think that it's just tough because the best player in the league and the most valuable player in the league, I think.
Depends on how you define it.
How you define it. I think the best player in the league to me right now is Kucherov. Watching them, Kucherov had to do this with
especially
an aging
lately.
team, without Hedman for most of the year. Stamkos is gone. He hasn't a bunch of there's Gensel and there's Hagel. There's very good players, Sorelli and Point and all that stuff. But he is the guy. He is the clear-cut best player on that team, and he does things that. In a different way than MacKinnon does and McDavid does, but and McKinnon's just on such a stacked team. They're like 1 and 2. They're like neck and neck. MacKinnon and Kucherov this year with McDavid hovering around. But I would probably vote as Kucherov is the best player in the league this year, I think. And then the most valuable player I would say is Macklin if they make the playoffs. And that seems like it's, but it's really it kind of does come down to that. This team is not good enough to even sniff the playoffs without them at all. They're a lottery pick. So if you make the playoffs, I'd say give them the MVP. I said give them the captaincy if they make the playoffs.
Well, so
Macklin, sorry that you finished second for the Hart. Here's the captaincy.
Yeah, honestly.
on awards night.
I would have to agree that if it's the most valuable player to the team, I think undeniably that's Macklin.
Yeah.
If it's most valuable player in the league, I would even put Kucherov over and MacKinnon over Celebrini this season.
And you got to give McDavid a lot of credit, too. Since Draisaitl's gone down, the Oilers haven't skipped a beat. He's heated up. So I did want to add, too, I wanted to look up just to make sure MacKinnon doesn't kill penalties. So he doesn't. So
he was on some penalty kills this season.
Nope, no. He hasn't been. Yeah. Just look at I'm looking at it on Hockey Reference. So he doesn't. So
I mean, I watched some games and he was on
Does
the
Kucherov?
PK.
I don't think they do.
I imagine
Kucherov
Kucherov
McDavid
does
might
not.
a little more, but at the end, and Macklin doesn't really either. But yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, though, yeah, like I've seen some people say if the Sharks miss the playoffs too, he's still the most valuable. Like, what would the Sharks be? They won't even be even close, which is totally accurate, right? But I mean, arguably, Macklin was the most important player on the Sharks last year too. You're not going to give him the
That's
MVP
true.
for that, right? So I just feel like you need that kind of your valuableness needs to lead to something. Which, in Taylor Hall's case a few years ago, when he won the MVP, a lot of it was because
Yeah.
he was able to take the Devils to the playoffs, and not really good team to the playoffs, or lead them to the playoffs. And I think it was a weak candidacy year that year too. This year it's a bit stronger with Kucherov and McDavid and McKinnon just firing on all cylinders. I wonder with McDavid, it's a little bit of McDavid fatigue because McDavid to me on night to night basis is the best player in the world still, I think. But and you see that even Team Canada, right, where McKinnon defers to him and Macklin defers to him, right? So like that's kind of like Kobe in the 2008 Olympics, where LeBron, everybody, they defer to Kobe, and that's kind of where you see the pecking order of how the rest of the league thinks of a player. One thing I did want to add, there was a good article by Pete Jensen at NHL.com today stating the case for Macklin, and he did mention that, I believe this is the last time that a non-playoff player won the MVP, was Mario Lemieux in 1987-88 over probably Wayne Gretzky, but I look back on that though, right? And the Penguins did miss the playoffs by 1 point. They were not a very good team, and that's kind of where the Sharks are kind of headed to. If they miss the playoffs, it'd probably just be by a couple points or whatever, right? And you look at a couple of things that are similar. On that Penguins team, the second leading scorer was Dan Quinn. And Dan Quinn was 79 points, and Mario Lemieux had 168 points.
Oh, jeez.
Jesus.
Now we're talking relative here, right?
Yeah,
so
it's
we're
the
not
80s,
expecting,
but-
we're not saying that Macklin needs to score 150 points, but it's not that there's someone with the Sharks though, where Macklin has 105 points,
Yeah, and Smith
and
has
number
54.
2 is Will Smith with 54. So it's almost 2-1 there, whereas with Mario it was a clear 2-1 there. I did want to mention though, I think one thing that I found interesting though is that that's a decent argument.
Did he lead the
but
league in scoring that year? Sorry.
That's what I was going to get to. Yeah,
okay.
you're on the same track as me. Mario led the league in scoring by 19 points, 19 points
Jesus.
ahead of Wayne Gretzky.
Okay.
Gretzky's last season in Edmonton. Mario also won it's now known as the 10 Lindsay Award, but the Pearson Award. And that's the NHLPA votes on the best player in the league, right?
Yeah.
And as much as we are high on Macklin, right, like I don't think anyone would say that this season he is the best player in the league. Top 5, right? But maybe not the best player in the league. So I think that's what kind of helped Mario's case that season, where he was not only was he the most valuable player, but he was also the best player without pretty much question. Except, I guess, if you're a Wayne Gretzky truther, which would have been legit back then.
Had already won like 8 Hearts at that point, right?
Exactly. The year before he got traded to the Kings. So so I thought that was interesting. So I'm still along the lines of that. I mean, to let into my vote, like I think I haven't decided, but I think if the Sharks make the playoffs, I will vote Macklin. I think if they don't, I don't know. I did have a scout tell me that like you're crazy, like he's so good. I'm not talking about Celebrini. Doesn't matter if they make the playoffs or not.
Yeah.
And so that's fair. And, I think we all agree that he is the most valuable to his team because they have no idea what the Sharks team would. Well, we do have idea of what the Sharks team would be like without him. So,
yeah.
But,
yeah, I mean, Kucherov might even, sorry to go back to Kucherov, but he might steal the Art Ross trophy because he's leading in points per game at 1.8 with McKinnon and McDavid at 1.66. So he's ahead if they finish out the season in their respective points, he could pass McDavid for most points this year. So he, if he wins the art and Tampa's still amazing and Celebrini misses, then I think my vote would be Kucherov. But
Yeah.
it really depends.
Kucherov won in 2019, by the way, but I did want to add, I do feel like, okay, not even talking about my vote, right? Whether or not you think I'm right, whether or not I should vote Celebrini or not, but I think for the rest of the league, my prediction for the rest of the PHWA, and I don't know this is not insider information, but my prediction is that Macklin does need that kind of it's more than a cherry on top, right? He needs his valuableness to lead to something that is tangible, which is a playoff appearance. Yeah. Being 1 point away, being 2 points out, that's not tangible.
Yeah, they need to really tear it up. They go 6-2 to end the year. He has 20 more points.
He does something like that, right? Yeah. So he needs one last push, and Zubair might be right that McKinnon pulls it out, but I think with McKinnon's been the favorite all year, but he's definitely, the Avs has slowed down. Not that he's been bad, but he's slowed down a little bit. I think Kucherov has really made a strong late case here.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a good chance I don't think it's definitively McKinnon if Macklin doesn't make the drag the Sharks to the playoffs. I'll say that. And that's just my guess with older trends.
Or they split votes and then Celebrini wins it.
That's possible.
Unlikely, but and I do wonder if there's a little bit of I don't know what to call it. Macklin's so young, and a lot of these times you're right. It's voted on by 1,000 media members, something.
No, it's about 300 of us. I think 200. I think it's about 200,
something
including
like that.
some broadcast people too.
I thought it was more than that for some reason, but
no.
A lot of them are going to look at the box score and just say well, he got the most points this year, and the Lightning or Avs are a wagon. Okay.
But I think everybody recognizes, even if they don't stay up to watch the games, just how bad the Sharks were last year. So people, those are things that jump out to voters who may not watch everything as much. It'd be wow, this team was last place and now they're in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. That's how Jack Adams are often. Actually, we don't vote on the Jack Adams, but that's often how that's decided, right? You just look at who sucked last year, who's good this year. Okay, coach of the year.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah, and. In case anyone's wondering, I also don't vote on the thing. I'm just going to put that out there. No one would give me a vote.
I've been begging. In my top 1,000, so.
Cool. Heck yeah. I've been begging, but nobody gives me a vote, so it's fine. It's fine. All right, what else do we got to talk about?
Okay. So anyway, to close off with this Macklin thing, hey, I know a lot of Sharks fans. They're mad when I don't vote for the Sharks. I get that all the time. The kind of stuff I got back when I voted Macklin, I think second for the Calder Trophy last year. I think I had Dustin Wolf third. And people expect you to vote Sharks because that's a team you cover, and that's never how I've done it. I think I've only voted. I voted Carlson for the Norris Trophy that year. I think that's maybe the only time I voted for a Shark number one in the vote. But if you guys have good, this is argument. Our ongoing discussion we'll have until I need to put in my vote by the end of the season. So. So we can still talk about it. So you guys can still convince me. So
I'll sway you.
So. You sway me.
I'll sway you if they win.
Also,
if they win,
Also, McKinnon. I mean, I don't think he's slowed down too much. I mean, he's had five goals, 2 assists in his last 5 games.
But look at Kucherov's numbers though. Since Kucherov's numbers are ridiculous. They're Gretzky in the last 50 games, aren't they? Right. So
I'm not. Well, I would say McKinnon or Kucherov over Celebrini. So I'm not saying McKinnon necessarily over Kucherov.
Okay.
But again, I don't think Celebrini, even if they make playoffs, is what I'm guessing is going to happen. Also, you got to look at time on ice. He's playing 4 more minutes a night. McKinnon.
Who?
McKinnon.
Wow.
Over Celebrini.
Is he playing 4 more minutes a night?
Yeah.
No, he's not. He's playing 22-15. He's not playing 4 more minutes a night.
22-15.
Your numbers are off. Yeah, he's not. Macklin's playing. He's playing. What is that? That's 52 more seconds a night than Macklin. They're all about the same.
I'm looking.
McDavid's the highest actually. McDavid's at 22:58. Kucherov's 20:21. So
what do you have for Celebrini's time on ice average this season?
21-23.
Oh, okay. Yeah, wherever my source. Let me change my source here.
Might be
Yeah,
the
I'm
wrong
just
year.
looking.
Might be last year.
Yeah, it could be a lot. Though Macklin was playing heavy minutes last year, but I'm just looking at it because I just want to look at how much Kucherov has scored in the last year, because it's kind of ridiculous. Like, since the new year, Kucherov has 73 points in 34 games. Number 2 is Connor McDavid with 56 and 35.
That is insane.
That's crazy,
insane.
right? And Pasternak, 52 at 35, McKinnon, 51 at 34, Nick Suzuki, 50 at 36, and Bouchard, 50 at 35. But anyway, just throw out some other names there. But
yeah, and most of that without Hedman. I think Hedman came back 3-4 weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
Hedman's not like
is
the guy that
right. I mean, yeah,
he's old, but it's still like one of their core pillars. They have been leaning on Radish a lot, but.
No, and I usually don't vote winger for the MVP historically. My vote, I did vote for Hall that year, but usually I wouldn't vote winger. But I mean,
oh no, Hedman came back I'm wrong on that. I think he came back in. Looks like after the Olympic break he was back.
No, but didn't he leave again? He's on personal leave now. So
is he?
That's what he is. He is now, right now. I believe he is, unless he came back recently. But
no, you're right. He went out the 19th. So
yeah.
Just been in and out. So. Yeah.
Those are just ridiculous numbers, though, by Kucherov. So anyway, though, okay. So next topic. It is related to how the Sharks have played this past week. Can Chernyshov, Celebrini, Smith be a Stanley Cup first line? What do you guys think? Now, that's a lot of projection here. Not so much with Macklin, but with Chernyshov and Will Smith. So what do you guys think, though? I
have an answer. I say yes.
Yes, you think so?
I think so. Number one, I think that we always forget the normal progression of prospects related to things, including Will Smith and Chernyshov, because of Celebrini. But Will Smith is doing exactly what Will Smith needs to be doing. There's times when you want more of Will Smith, but it doesn't really matter. One of his greatest strengths is his vision, his ability to find people on the ice, and that's only going to get better the more and more time he plays in the NHL. I think he's an excellent complement for that line, and if they stick together, and Chernyshov is, we still have to see, but he, in the spurts that he plays, looks really good. Looks like a natural fit. And Celebrini, top 3 player in the world at some point. Yes is my answer. That's what I got. That's what I got. Like, maybe they could switch around stuff if they find another super high skilled veteran or whatever. But I think it's a potential future first line, mostly because of Celebrini Smith. Like, Chernyshov for now is kind of like a good fit. Doesn't mean that he will always be that. Maybe he will. Maybe he'll develop even more and be the integral part of that. But I think it's really Celebrini and Smith magic.
I think there's been nights that I've seen Chernyshov when he's been on, and I think yesterday he wasn't so good against Toronto. I wonder if he's still a little bit ill, but that he might be the Sharks' best winger at times. I mean, he's been so good a couple of these games that we've seen. And this is like for our first-year player who's played 20 games in NHL. So we're projecting out too, obviously. And so, we've been high on Chernyshov since the beginning, but I wonder if we oversold him because he's really good.
Zubair, any different opinion?
You didn't answer the question. Yeah, what do you think?
I'm with Keegan. I definitely think so. I think the components of a first line, Celebrini, top center, one of the top centers in the league. So that's the hardest, I think, component to find.
Right.
Yep.
And then you have playmaking ability with Will Smith, someone who can slow the games down, has really good hands, has a shot. And then what Chernyshov gives you is that, straight flat out speed that can drive the puck wide, hold on to pucks, be good down low in the boards. And so I think you kind of have all the components, good forechecking between Celebrini and Chernyshov. And you look at the top lines in the league, look at Dallas, like Wyatt Johnson, Jason Robertson, Mikko Rantanen, like I can see a matchup against them. I can even see a matchup against Colorado's first line with, Nashis and McKinnon. So it's like you think about other first lines in the league of the top teams, and I can see that line holding their own. And
eventually, right? Yeah, I actually can see it too. Like I always hesitate to be like, okay, this is a playoff caliber Stanley Cup first line kind of thing, and they're still a ways away, especially Chernyshov and Smith. But like, one of the things I really like about Chernyshov on his line is that he duplicates a lot of what Macklin does well. And not as well as Macklin, of course, but like basically what he does is that he basically, and I wrote about this in a story a couple days ago, just, why this line clicks. But after the Anaheim game, I think, but he takes the load off of Macklin. And Will Smith is an incredible player in his own right, but Will doesn't really quite, because Will's skills aren't carrying it from blue line to blue line. They aren't along the boards, right? And so when you put somebody else with Celebrini and Smith, that that basically leaves Macklin as your top puck carrier, your top play driver, your guy who is the best on the forecheck, even though he's the center, but he often has to do that F1 stuff, right? And just things that basically take Macklin away from being able to hide sometimes, and to not be the focus of the defense. If you put him in, I think Toffoli's actually done a really good job with that line this year, for example, and even Graf, right, has done a good job with that line. But like on that line, like those guys don't duplicate Macklin's skills. So like from blue line to blue line, watch Macklin. From, along the walls, well, Graf and Toffoli are better there, but, forecheck F1, Macklin's going to be the quickest guy there, even if he's, should be high sometimes, or you want him to be high as a center. Not that he's doing anything wrong, but you want him high as a center. But when you have a guy like Chernyshov, again, he's not as good at carrying a blue line to blue line, but he's not that far off, though. He's a threat. He pushes defenses back along the walls. He's strong, right? He's a bull. He plays fast. He plays faster than Graf. He plays fast in a way that, and that's, I think, where Will excels with Macklin, because I think nobody plays faster on the Sharks than, matches Celebrini's pace than Will Smith. And so it just how they complement each other has been really exciting to watch. And so I think it can develop. I think JD talked about last episode too, that you need to see kind of next year like Chernyshov, can you take that leap to be like a 30-30 guy?
Yeah.
Right.
I would add to that too, that I think the other component that makes that line lethal and will be a first line to compete with is Chernyshov's shot and his ability to move into soft ice. So like you saw that with Celebrini, taking all the attention, how Will Smith was able to set him up for a pair of goals the other night. And that's because he's got the shot to finish, and he can also move to soft ice really well.
Yep.
And then he has the body to protect that. Like his triangle has a pretty large radius. And so I think also
he's gonna get better too. Yeah,
exactly.
Right, right, yeah. So he's
it's going to get
20,
better,
so,
and I think that eventually, what I think the Sharks development staff will do is help establish a better net front presence with him, which he has the ability to do. And I think once that happens, then there's really nothing this line can't do, because you don't want Macklin in front of the net. Will is not in front of the net, and so I think that's the last component, and then boom, I think you got it.
Yeah. No, I agree with everything you said there. Just it's kind of crazy to be talking like in such lofty terms about Sharks prospects. I'm just used to being like, what is this guy doing on the first line?
Yeah, like we're trying him out, but Chernyshov, like ever since, fits like a glove. Honestly, there was a little bit of a moment after his first call up where a couple games he kind of fell off for a while, but that's to be expected.
Yeah, he's still a rookie. Yeah, so.
But no, I agree. He has all the makings of the guy that can do the board play, the net front, the transition up the ice when Celebrini isn't. So I really, great acquisition.
He needs one more big year of development. So I don't want to proclaim that it's set, but the way he has developed though, from last year, right?
Yeah, if you get that as your first line, and then you get, eventually maybe like Macklin, Misa, Graf, and as like a very good second line, or even like rotating your second and third line with Wenberg and Sherwood and whoever is your ninth forward. That's such a good top nine that we haven't seen in a very long time. There was a year where the Sharks made the playoffs where they had like 9 20-goal scorers or something like that.
Yeah, that was the last time. Yeah, fucking Gustav Nyquist on the third line.
That's what I want. Like, I want just like the most loaded forward core, and we're working towards it. Honestly, like it's, we keep like stockpiling these guys that really can fit. We're loading a forward core with one of the best forwards in the league. So
that was such a loaded team. It's just
really
too bad they
was.
got hurt. I mean, Eric Carlson and Brent Burns on the blue line, prime of both those guys. But
Classic's still
anyway,
good. And last,
one more thing on Chernyshov too that I think is worth mentioning is, when you have a really good top first line, you got to be good in all zones. And, as a winger, something he does really well is he covers his points so well in the defensive zone. And I think that's why they saw him as a good penalty killer, and you see him on the PK as well.
Mark Stone-esque, if you will.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what?
You said it. Yeah.
Keegan, I got to give it to Keegan. I gave Keegan so much shit for that.
Yeah.
But
I really do see it. Like, he's got enough, like, eventually the way that he thinks the game, I agree with you, Zubair. Like, he has a defensive mind there that will hopefully keep developing.
He's already competent defensively. He's not like perfect. He makes some plays he shouldn't, but like, he tracks back. What was it? Sorry to interrupt, but I think his game winner against Columbus, he's the one who goes and gets the puck, and then he skates it up, and then so
he's good through the neutral zone, and like we said, he pushes D back, but he gets the puck out of our zone really well, and a lot of that's because he's good on the walls in our zone, in the defensive zone, and he's able to cover the opposing team's top line defense really well.
Just a faster
your first line.
Mark Stone.
You're playing against Quinn Hughes, you're playing against Cal McCarr, and you need to be tight on those guys because guys are pinching. Those guys are activating, and so moving with those guys is not an easy task as a winger. And he's done that well when he's needed to. You don't spend a lot of time in our zone when he's on there.
I agree. Yeah, I said he duplicates like a lot of what Macklin does well, not as well, but well enough that like it takes the load off of Macklin. And that means so much because it gives Macklin. I don't think it's any coincidence that Macklin had this breakout, the 9 points in 3 games or whatever, in part because, Graf was on the line the last game, of course, too, but just that, like, a guy that just lets him kind of hide sometimes, in the zone and not be the number one guy, number one with the puck and all that stuff, right? But anyway, so we are going to talk about Michael Misa, and I'm going to talk about him in relation to Austin Matthews, which is the thing we're going to close with. But before we do that, though, just really quickly, I just wanted to do Bears impressions because this is a big deal in San Jose. The Sharks are renovating, reimagining the SAP Center, and there was a presentation for season ticket holders last couple days ago.
Yeah,
and I know Zubair, you've kept up with. You've been going to games your whole life. So, what do you see in that? Anything just kind of jump out to you? I want to touch on that a little bit before we.
Yeah, no, I think it's just all exciting stuff. As the product and the ice gets better, it's really important as fans start to fill the tank again that the fan experience improves, and I see lots of great things in the initial portrayal of what they're going to do. Shang has a really great article on it, so check it out at San Jose Hockey Now on some of the changes
I didn't write
to
it.
come.
Felicia Keller did for me, but I was there at the event though.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I mean, they're just. I mean, one of the biggest problems as fans know is just lines. I mean, just waiting in lines and trying to get food and
It's
get
a
back to
single
your seat.
concourse, right? Which is unusual, right? Yeah,
correct. Yeah, and so. Yeah. And I love the idea that, they're keeping it at SAP for a little bit longer. I mean, there's just so much nostalgia in that rink. So to be able to renovate it, modernize it, but also keep some of that nostalgia, I'm really excited. Obviously, it's going to be staged out over a couple of summers, but I'm excited to see even some of the minor stuff that they are able to accomplish in this offseason. So just great stuff all around. I mean, you've seen improvements at TechCU and San Jose Ice and now SAP. So like I said, as the product gets better on the ice, it's nice that the facilities are also getting upgraded simultaneously. Super exciting stuff.
Keegan, you have any plans to come out to watch a Sharks game any time in the next?
We were thinking about it. We went to California. We went to San Diego last week, which is why my last video was in a hotel room. But
I see that you've gained a bit of a tan.
I got a tan now. I got the.
No, I'm just joking.
No, I don't. Wore tons of sunscreen because, good God, I forgot how much like California or just like the sun in general will burn you. But no, we were talking about it. We were like, I miss California. Maybe go up to Napa and San Francisco and San Jose soon. But probably a next year thing. We got to get married first, so it's expensive.
All right.
Oh, anyway.
That it is. Okay, well, speaking of expensive, excellent segue, if I may say so myself. So, Austin Matthews.
Nice.
Austin Matthews, 28 years old, 13.25 million AAV through 2030. There is speculation that he is a guy that is not long for the Maple Leafs. Obviously, Toronto had a very rough season this year, and hard to say what the direction is because obviously they lost Mitch Marner too last year, and Tavares is older, Morgan Riley is older, so a lot of the pieces that they thought were going to help them win the Stanley Cup are aging. So to add to it, Darren Dreger mentioned today, and Darren did emphasize that it is just speculation on his part, but that if Matthews was to leave, that maybe San Jose would be a good fit. I think Mike Rupp may have said too that he doesn't believe that Matthews is going to be in Toronto for long. That's just his belief. And so there's been a lot kind of out there about Matthews this year. So before I get to, I'm going to talk with Michael Misa in relation to this, but what do you guys think about that in relation to the Sharks?
I think it's not the. I think it's not the. It's not the thing that we need to swing for. I guess like because I imagine they're gonna, like if he was free, right? Like some free agency.
He's not gonna be free,
like sure, but he's not the. I think the forward core here. Yes, we could use another big shooter like that. I think that is a missing component from the Sharks a bit. But I don't know. We have bigger fish to fry, bigger problems is my my thinking.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you in the sense that like D is the biggest issue, and there's an opportunity cost with that much salary.
Yeah.
Going towards another forward,
and he had to probably trade a lot for him.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, and that's where I'm. I guess the big question marks for me is like, what trade assets would we have to leverage and get rid of in order to acquire an Austin Matthews? I mean, no doubt he's going to make your team better. Like, it's Austin Matthews. He's ridiculously good. And I mean, not only a goal scorer, but as you can see in the Olympics, like great defensive center. Again, like Connor McDavid, I think doesn't get enough credit for his defensive game. I love the way he plays in the defensive zone. And also he would just make your power play lethal. Sure. And so I think those are things that obviously any team in the league can use. But to Keegan's point, like, Mike Rear said he's really happy with our centers right now. He likes our four centers. And I think you're building around that. I mean, and so if someone like him becomes available at the right price, what do you have to give up? I think Wenberg's out of here. I think maybe even Misa's out of here.
Not Wenberg. I think Misa, right? I don't think Wenberg would attract Toronto, but yeah, Misa would be
I think Wenberg could be in there with. I mean, obviously not the only.
Well,
piece.
He's not the centerpiece. I mean, Misa's the one that you're really gonna, you're gonna miss.
Yeah, and I do think we'll see how he recovers from the knee injury, but like he's at the right age too, right? Like I think 28 is a great age to bring in a veteran center with tons of experience. So I don't hate it, but I find it's unlikely and unnecessary based on the priorities to Keegan's point and what the Sharks need to acquire right now, which is clearly defense.
A lot of criticism of Matthews of not being that number one player in Toronto, but that's one thing that if you were to acquire a player like him, guess what? You don't have to be the number one player. You got Macklin Celebrini.
Yeah.
So if Matthews just concentrates on shooting and playing defense, then that's, he scored 69 goals a couple of years ago, right? So, but yeah, no, I agree with you guys that defense is obviously the priority, but that's also very difficult to acquire. So I wonder if it does come from Mike Rear in a sense of like, we need more elite players, and we can't wait around for Rasmus Dahlin or somebody to be available. And so maybe we build a team this way and we try to build a solid defense kind of 1 through 6 without like a kingpin defenseman, kind of like Florida did. It all comes down to cost, obviously. And I did want to mention with Misa that I did a story last couple weeks ago, talked with a scout that it's so high on Michael Misa, says that celebrating Misa, he thinks is going to be basically the most dynamic center duel in the league.
Yep.
He said that those two centers are going to change the West. is how he put it. And even though Michael is still very raw, you can kind of see the elements of it though, right? That like Michael Misa is an attentive defensive player. Obviously still not great at it, but he's attentive for an 18, 19-year-old. He has a frame. He has puck protection potential. And you can see him do it at times. Not obviously he's just 19 and he's not built like Macklin Celebrini, but he does it at a way higher level than most 19-year-olds can. He has hockey sense. He has a shot that we haven't seen a lot of yet, but I think we will see more of.
Yep.
He just is a really well-rounded center, and maybe he ends up like I don't know, Nico Hischier or something like that, right? But or maybe better, But yeah, so I think that's tough to kind of give that up too. Yeah, I mean, again, the Sharks aren't like a player away, where like you trade Misa for Matthews, and Matthews brings in 50, 60 goals and power play presence and a good two-way presence, and maybe he's the guy that puts you over the top. So
Yeah, I think we got maybe a couple more years before we're trying to add in those type of window extender kind of guys, like the guys that are gonna be. We still need to prove that this is a team that is, like we need to get the defense to a point where we are consistently making the playoffs. We are, battling for winning the Stanley Cup, and then maybe a guy, not Matthews specifically at that point, but a different guy could be brought in with your young guys and really take this team over the top. But I think it's you just keep growing with Celebrini and Misa, as would be my opinion.
And I think a lot of it is positional too, like you guys say too. Like if the same thing came up this summer with Quinn Hughes, after what we've seen with Macklin this year, I would give up the equivalent package, except no Dickinson, because Sharks need a defenseman, obviously. So I would have matched the Minnesota offer, because
yeah, I mean,
even without extension from Quinn Hughes, because you need that defense so bad, and that's kind of like just guys like that are so rare too. There's like Quinn Hughes, there's Darlene, there's McCarr. There's like 5 guys that you would kind of like say, okay, this is our number one guy for the next like decade or so, 5 years, decade. We feel good about this. And so, yeah. But not for like a center winger, which kind of duplicates, what the Sharks are strong in already. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
My computer's gonna die, so we've got moments, mere moments.
Okay. Well, I think we're about done here. That is really interesting rumor, and I mean, you can argue it too, because Matthews, I don't want to discount him as a player. I mean, again, 69 goals a couple of years ago, good defensively. He's a center too, right? And obviously too, and as he ages too, I mean, he could be on the wing. He's going to help you on the wing still with his shot. So like. So he's an amazing player as long as he's like healthy, but
yeah, he was born in Arizona, so kind of used to the area.
Well, he's born in San Ramon, actually.
Yeah.
He was born here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought I guess he was raised in Arizona then.
Yeah, he was raised in Arizona.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think
so
also
he'd be like Macklin, another like not actually Bay Area guy that they can claim. Like everyone claims Macklin for that 1 year he played on Junior Sharks.
To Keegan's point too, I think when the Sharks are further along in their development as an organization, I think when you want to sign that like extra punch on the offensive side or something, they're gonna want to come here, and they're gonna want to come here maybe at a discount. Right now, if you're paying anyone, you're paying full price or more. Like you talk about Quinn Hughes a lot. Quinn didn't want to come here, I don't think, or would want to come here. He had stated he wanted to stay close to family, wanted to stay in that region.
If you know those things too, then you don't make that trade. So
you don't make that trade. I think also like the Sharks still, to Keegan's point, need to make this place more attractive. Like we need to be clearly defined playoff Stanley Cup contention, and then I think you can start signing these big names But until then, you're building from the ground up, kind of.
Well, by 2030, if he makes it that far as a free agent,
Yep. Connor
San Jose
McDavid
might look mighty good to him in 2030. So
yeah. Cool, guys. All right. Great session. I'm looking forward to listening to the Chris Peters section as well.
Okay. Oh, there goes Keegan. But okay. Well, I guess we've all crossed the Randy Hahn Rubicon, except for Dan Boyle, who we got to get him on board. And anyway, okay, Zubair, great job. And everybody, thanks for listening. And we will see you next week.
See you guys. See you, Shingers.